Hello friends. This is Fiction Quest. How are you all? So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto become the guardian of Great Ocean and fell in love with Viola? But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video. It all started with a fruit, an atypical fruit that was being sold in one of the many stands in the merchant district of a certain village hidden in the leaves. The fruit itself was what could be described as out of this world. It looked rather rough, with a large bundle of berry-like fruits tightly compressed together while forming the shape of clashing spirals. Its color was purple with a dash of red and blue along the sides of the fruit. It was certainly unique, and in its uniqueness the fruit managed to grab the attention of a certain girl that was passing by. The girl's cerulean blue eyes looked at the fruit curiously, her small stature standing in front of a rather shady-looking stall where the fruit was being sold. She broke her look on the fruit as her gaze slowly shifted to the owner of the stall. It was a man, an old man with pale white skin and a gruff-looking beard. The man was sitting behind his stall garbed in a black cloak hiding most of his body. Mister?" the girl asked as the wind gently blew, making her golden blonde hair flow along with the wind. "Yes, Gaki?" the old man asked as he looked at his customer, a girl wearing a plain black shirt that has a red spiral symbol emblazoned on its chest along with light brown pants. The girl also has cerulean blue eyes and slightly tanned skin along with her golden blonde hair styled in pigtail. "Nay, mister, what is this?" the girl asked as she pointed at the strange fruit on top of the man's stall. "Ah," the man said, smirking as he played with his white beard with his free hand. "That is just a fruit I picked up in my travels." "Travels?" "Yes." The man cleared his throat. "I have traveled to places beyond this nation of the elements. I have traversed all 4 seas. I have been through the New World and back. I am the—" He looked at the girl and noticed she wasn't paying attention, her eyes still fixed on the fruit. The man smiled. "I guess I'm not important." He cleared his throat once more to get the girl's attention. "Do you want to take the fruit?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "No, I'm not supposed to take things from people I don't know." "Did your father say to not take things from strangers?" the merchant joked. "Hi," the girl admitted, nodding her head as she did so. "Why?" "Because he said that some people are bad and they might want to hurt me." "Ah, but I am not one of those people. I am but a kind and humble merchant," the man said as he stood up slowly and took the strange fruit in hand before tossing it at the girl. "Whoa," the girl cutely said as she caught the strange fruit. "Take it, Gaki, I have a feeling that you'll need this in the future." "Thank you for the fruit, mister," the girl said as she bowed her head. "It's not a problem, Gaki, but can you answer a simple question?" "Hi. What do you want to ask Jii-san? What's your name?" the man asked. "Namikaze de Naruto," the girl answered. The man paused for a moment before breaking out in a fit of chuckles. "Ha ha ha ha, this truly was a destined meeting," the man said, laughing while hitting his leg with one hand while the other rested on his stomach. "Mua, are you making fun of me?" the girl asked, puffing her cheeks cutely as she hugged the fruit. "No, I am just laughing at how fickle fate is," the man said as he recovered from his small laughing fit. "Why don't you try eating the fruit, Gaki?" The girl looked hesitant for a second before taking a bite out of the fruit. 3 bites later the girl ate the entire fruit, and safe to say the girl found it as the most disgusting thing she has ever tasted. "Blair. It tasted so bad, Ji-chan," the girl complained as she stuck out her tongue. "Ha ha ha, I know it tastes bad, but trust me, from here on out things will just get better for you," the man said proudly. He then looked at the horizon and noticed that it was almost sunset. "I think it's about time for you to go home, Gaki. It's getting late." "Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me, Ji-chan. I don't want Okawa-san and Oto-san to get mad at me," Naruto said as she quickly left the stall and started running to her house. "Goodbye, Gaki," the man whispered as he watched the girl's back disappearing along with the sun in the horizon. "May you continue to carry on the will of D," the merchant said as he began fixing his stall before leaving the area, never to be seen or heard of again. That night the girl had trouble sleeping because she felt both hot and cold at the same time. Into the great ocean a few years later, in the midst of a flood plain along a great river within Mizu no Kuni, stood 2 figures. One, or at least one of them, stood while the other was on their knees coughing in the ground. "Moo, this is stupid," The girl, now aged 10, complained as she breathed heavily on top of dry land. Her simple orange shirt and dark blue pants were now soaked in freezing cold water. Why is she wet and exhausted, you ask? Because the young Namikaze spent the entire day learning. Read Screwing Up, the ninja art of water walking, from none other than her father figure through the recent years, the one and only super self-proclaimed super pervert Jiraiya. That's strange, Gaki. Your chakra control is good for your age. The Toad Sage Man rubbed the back of his head. You can tree walk perfectly and use Shozen Jutsu, mystical palm technique, to a certain extent, so why can't you water walk? Naruto glared at her teacher as she finally regained her breath. I'm doing it right. I know I'm doing it right, but for some reason my chakra destabilizes the moment I step on water. It's as if it dissolves. That's strange, the older man said as he sat down a nearby rock and began scribbling down notes in an orange notebook. Ero Gigi, the girl called out as she stood up and shook her body. Despite the freezing temperature of the water, she felt rather warm and unaffected by it. She doesn't know how, but for some reason she developed a high tolerance towards the hottest or coldest temperatures. Add to the fact that a few years ago she also discovered that she has the ability to create both the hottest of fire and coldest of ice in the palm of her hands. Again, she didn't really know how she could perform such a feat, but it was awesome. The sage asked as he stopped scribbling down notes for a moment and looked at his student's daughter. Truth be told, he also felt like the girl was his own daughter, or at least granddaughter, since he basically raised the girl for the last few years together with his wife Tsunade. Heck, he was sure Tsunade considered the girl in front of him as her own daughter. Why else would she teach the girl how to gambler, use healing jutsu, or even her super strength? For some reason, the thought of the girl in front of him growing into a second Tsunade sent shivers down his spine. What is it, Gaki? Why can't I be back in Konoha with my family? The girl asked, making the older man sigh. It wasn't the first time the girl asked the question, and it probably won't be the last. I already told you before, Naruto. You can't go back to Konoha right now because it's a dangerous time. Your family is currently spearheading operations against a group called Akatsuki. Why can't I fight with them then? Because you're still too young, Gaki, the man said as he patted the head of the girl. As much as he'd like to grant the girl's wish and bring her back to Konoha where her friends and family were, he couldn't. With the attack of the masked man a few years ago, Minato found out that the village's defenses have been compromised. He really didn't want to risk the safety of his daughter, so he decided to send her to possibly the safest place in the world, which was under the guidance of 2 of the 3 Sannin. I miss them, Ero Gigi, the girl said as she looked at the ground. She really missed everyone, her family, her friends, and her best friend. She sighed and tried to think of something else lest she further want to depress herself. Nay, Ero Jii. The girl called out once more as her gaze shifted from the ground and into the nearby river, where she almost drowned in a few times this day. What is it, Gaki? Anyo, where does this lead to? The girl asked as she pointed at the large body of water nearby while looking at the older man beside her. That leads to the ocean, Gaki. Ocean? Yeah, the man said as he looked at the river with a serene look on his face as if he was reminiscing something. Naruto, do you want to hear a secret? If it's not perverted then sure, otherwise I'll tell Oba-san. The older man immediately shook his head and hands in front of the girl. No, this is definitely not perverted, he said to the girl, who nodded to him. Why don't you take a seat, this might take a while. Hi, Naruto cheerfully replied while sitting on the ground, legs crossed. You know I travel a lot, right? Yeah. Well, when I was a bit younger I once grabbed a ride on this ship and traveled across the ocean. I was on that ship for months until it docked in a land across the seas. Would you believe me if I tell you it was a land without ninjas? No ninjas? How is that even possible? Well, I don't really know, I only really spent a while there before going back. I did meet this one man, and even without chakra he was quite strong, called himself a pirate or something. The sage then laughed. We became good friends. I even joined his crew and sailed the seas for months. It was really fun, but I had to leave. Why did you leave? From what you're saying it seemed like you were enjoying yourself, the girl asked. She was certainly entranced with the older man's tale. Well, I had to return to Konoha because the toads told me of another war occurring in the horizon. I wonder if I can see that place one day, she said as she looked at the waves. You know, one of these days I'd like to travel those oceans once more. Who knows, if you're strong enough I'd bring you along. Mua, the girl grumbled out as she crossed her arms on her chest and puffed her cheeks. You know one day I'll be stronger than you. He. You're not bad Gaki, the man said as he rubbed the girl's head. You know you're the only person I told this wish to. Jiraiya chuckled. It's really funny, I always told my previous students about my wish for peace, but it never occurred to me to tell them about my wish to travel the seas. The old sage looked at the sky, taking note of the dark clouds approaching. I'm just a frog in the bottom of a well that wishes to reach the great ocean once more, he said with a hint of sadness in his voice. Don't worry Eroji, if you can't go back there I'll make sure to travel in your place. That's a promise, the girl said, snapping the older man out of his melancholic daze. The older man smiled kindly as he looked at the girl. She was still sitting on the ground with a large grin on her face that reminded the old sage of the girl's mother. Ha, I'd like that. My wish for peace is already being carried on my previous students, so I guess my wish to return to the ocean can be carried on by you. He then smiled mischievously, deciding to tease the girl. The oceans are a rough place Gaki, lots of strong creatures out there, so someone like you who can't even water walk or swim is basically asking for a death sentence. It'll work out in the end, the girl shouted as she continued pouting. And what about your dream of becoming the Hokage? The older sage asked. Odo-san can keep that seat for a while, and there are a lot of people better for the Hokage seat before me. Heck, Itachi-ni and Inu-san will probably be the next ones in line to be Hokage. Oh, what about him then? Don't you think he's a cage candidate? Nope, because Itachi-ni can kick his ass. Ha, don't put him down just for that. The two of them only fought once and both were holding back. Mua. The girl pouted again, making the older sage sigh. It seems that he stepped on a landmine here, since the girl for some reason never got along with him. You know what Gaki? Why don't you show me one of those techniques that you've been developing? Why should I? Secrecy is part of being a shinobi and I'll teach you the Rasengan, spiraling sphere, if you impress me. And it's not wise to show your, wait, you'll teach me the Rasengan? The girl's eyes widened as she shot out from her sitting position. Really, Erojiji? Yeah. The girl smiled brightly. Well then, get ready to be impressed, Erojiji, she said as she stood up straight, feet apart, hands up horizontally, palms facing the heaves. What are you supposed to be? The toad sage was about to ask, only to stop halfway through, his eyes widening at the sight he saw. The girl's left hand was covered with fire while her right hand was covered in what looked like a coat of crystalline ice. He saw her smirk as she clapped both of her hands together. He had to close his eyes as a bright light surrounded the area. When the old man opened his eyes, he was given the sight of two large craters, one filled with flames, the other with ice. Standing in between the two crates was a smirking blonde pigtailed girl. Safe to say that day marked the day Naruto's Rasengan training started. Into the great ocean the girl, now 12, made her way towards her parents' house. For the past few months she has been allowed back in Konoha in order to participate for the Genin graduation exam. She smiled while running in her hand was a certificate indicating her title as Rookie a Year, a title she shared with her best friend. Channeling as much chakra as he could on her legs, the girl ran through the newly constructed Namikaze Uzumaki compound. It wasn't as big as the Uchihas or the Hyugas, but it was still pretty huge. Oh look, it's Namikaze-sama. Good evening, Namikaze-sama. Hello, Namikaze-sama. The girl slowed her running as she smiled and waved at the blonde-haired or red-haired people greeting her. Most of the residents of the compound were members of the Namikaze clan, as well as the survivors of the Uzumaki clan that her mother Kushina searched for and convinced to join Konoha. Oi! Why are you in such a rush, Gaki? Naruto heard, making her stop on her tracks and look immediately towards the direction of the voice. Sitting down on a nearby stall that sold dango was none other than one of her friends. She has long red hair that went past her shoulder, porcelain white skin that stood in contrast with her black sleeveless shirt and black Jonin pants. Hello to Yuya ne, the girl said as she cheerfully waved at the girl, a kind gesture that Yuya returned. So where's the fire, Naru-chan? The red-haired Uzumaki asked. Well, I just wanted to go home to show everyone this, Naruto said proudly as she showed a certificate to Yuya, who let out a low whistle. Wow, Rookie of the Year, not bad, Naru-chan, the foul-mouthed Kunoichi said as she patted the younger girl's hair. I'm sure your family will be proud of you. Thank you, Ne-chan. No problem, Naru-chan, the girl said before pinching the girl's cheeks. But what did I tell you to call me the last time? You. Do I really have to? The girl asked as she looked at Yuya, who was smiling slyly as she nodded. An ego. The girl whispered, making Tayuya smile as she let go of the girl's cheek. Good. Well, I wouldn't like to keep you here any longer. Thank you, Angio, said Naruko as she waved goodbye at the older Kunoichi before running her home. After a few more minutes of running, Naruko reached a simple-looking 3-story house that stood in the middle of the entire compound. The girl smiled and excitedly opened the door before running inside. Everyone! The girl shouted, her eyes closed while she smiled. I graduated top of the class. I'm Rookie of the Year. The girl said proudly, expecting praise and the kind embrace of her family in response. Instead, she got silence, dulling silence along with the sight of a dark and empty house. When the girl opened her eyes, there was no one inside, just like always. She sighed while taking a few steps towards the kitchen, opening the lights as she did so. The girl looked around and frowned when she spotted a note on top of the kitchen table. We discovered another Akatsuki base, went with Oto-san to investigate. If you need anything, just go to Miko-chan's house tonight. Already told her you were coming. XOX, Kashina. The girl visibly deflated as she crumpled the piece of paper before burning it in her hand. She dropped the certificate and placed it on top the table where she found the note. Naruko then walked towards the fridge and opened it, only to find that there wasn't anything inside except for carton upon cartons of expired milk. I wonder if he's here, the girl said as she closed the fridge and made her way to the second floor of the house. The house itself was simple, a living room, dining room, bathroom, onsen, and kitchen on the first floor, one master bedroom along with a few smaller rooms in the second floor, and finally one huge jutsu library along with the office, study in the third floor. The girl kept walking as she reached a room in the middle of the hall in second floor. Before she could even knock or enter the room, the girl found a note sticking in its wooden frame. Not here on a mission, she read before sighing once more. Jiraiya and Tsunade were going to pick her up tomorrow to resume her training under them. She really wanted to see her family once more, but it didn't look like it was going to be possible. Shaking her head, the girl left her house and made her way to the Uchiha compound. Into the great ocean. Yoho Miko-chan, Naruko greeted after opening a sliding door leading to the house of the one and only Uchiha Makoto and her family. Hello, Naru-chan, said a beautiful raven-haired woman as she walked out from the kitchen to greet her lively visitor. Kushi told me that you'd be coming tonight for dinner. Hi, dinner will be ready in a while. Oh, and congratulations on becoming Rookie of the Year. Ah, thank you, Miko-chan, the girl said as she scratched the back of her head, a habit she seemingly inherited from her sensei. But you know I tied with... The young Namikaze stopped as she heard the sound of light footsteps approaching. She didn't even need to look to know who it belonged to. Channeling chakra into her feet, Naruko kicked off the ground and before suddenly glomping the newcomer, a girl her age with porcelain white skin and raven black hair tied into a long ponytail. Yohu, Seiyu-chan, Naruko told the girl as she hugged the newcomer, her co-rookie of the year, best friend, and only daughter of Makoto, Uchiha Sayuri. Ugh, get off, Naru-chan, the girl said as she looked at the girl who was crushing her in a hug. Don't wanna blah, the girl said as she stuck her tongue out, making Makoto giggle in the side as she recalled the same scene happening in the past, only involving her and a certain red-hair, hot-headed Kunoichi. Sayuri sighed. You really are a handful sometime, she said as she patted the blonde hair of her friend. Just like Kushi-chan and me when we were younger. Huh? You're still pretty young, Miko-chan, said Naruko. Aw, thank you, Naru-chan, for that. You'll get a bigger serving tonight. Yada. Thank you, Miko-chan, the girl said as she released her friend from the glomp before pumping her fist in the air. Okawa-san, don't you think you should go back to the kitchen? I think dinner might be burning, Sayuri said as she rubbed her shoulders. Seriously, Naruko just didn't know her own strength from time to time. Ah. Yes, well, I'll see you two later, Makoto said as she walked back to the kitchen to prepare the night's meal. So what do you want to do, Seiyu-chan? Asked the ever-so-cheerful Naruko. Sayuri just stared at the girl for a while before gesturing her to follow. The two walked silently towards the veranda overlooking a small courtyard connected to the house's living room. The Uchiha gracefully sat down on the wooden floor of the veranda before patting on the side, gesturing Naruko to join her. The blonde nodded and sat down beside her friend as the two looked at the early night sky. The sun was just setting as an orange twilight covered the sky. There was a moment of silence as the two just kept their eyes locked on the beauty that nature presented to them. So what's troubling you? Sayuri asked as she decided to break the silence. Huh, what are you talking about? Naru-chan, I've been your best friend for a long time now. I've been your friend since we were kids. I know when something is bothering you. Oh, how did you find out then? I won't tell you, otherwise you'll fix that troublesome habit of your making it even more troublesome to notice if something is disturbing you. You've been hanging around Shikamaru-san too much, Naruko said, noting the other girl's use of the word troublesome. Well, you've been hanging around Itachi-ni too much, said Sayuri as she looked at Naruko before smirking. Don't tell me you have a crush on Itachi-ni. What are you talking about? Naruko shouted out as she shot out of her seat. I don't have a crush on your brother. The girl shook her head in complete denial. Don't you mean that you have a crush on him? Why must you always grunt like that when you're losing an argument you broke on? I am not losing an argument, Naru-chan, and I don't know what a brokon is. It's a term Jiraiya-sensei came up with for younger sisters that have the hots for their brother IEU, Naruko said with a smug look on her face as she pointed at Sayuri. What did you say, Dobi? Sayuri asked, feeling that the blonde has overstepped her bounds. I said you're a brokon teme, shouted Naruko. The two glared at each other as sparks flew from their visions. From the living room walked in Sayuri's dad Fugaku, who saw the two girls glaring at each other. Being the wise man that he was, Fugaku immediately turned around and left to go to the kitchen to see how Makoto was doing. Grr, Naruko growled out. Grr, Sayuri matched the growl with hers. The two kept growling and glaring at each other before smirking and breaking out into a fit of giggling that turned into full-brunt laughter. I needed that, thanks, Seiyu, Naruko said in between her laughter as she held on tightly to her stomach. No problem, Sayuri said as she finally stopped laughing. It's okay if you don't want to tell me what's bothering you, but know that I'm here for you. It's my family, Naruko said, deciding to share her troubles with her friend. Your family? Asked at Ravenet. Yeah, I barely see them, Naruko said sadly as she looked back up on the early night sky. Even for the past month that I've been here, I only saw them once, the girl deflated as she decided to lie down on the wooden floor, her eyes never leaving the sky. Ero Gigi and Tsunade Ban are more of a family to me than my real one. Sometimes I think they don't care about me anymore, the girl complained, not noticing Sayuri inching towards her, hand raised up in the sky. Bonk, ouch, what was that for? Naruko said as she held on her forehead. They care about you, Baka, don't think otherwise, I know, but your family will always be there for you no matter what, remember that, Naru-chan. Naruko smiled. This was probably the most her friend had tried to actually comfort someone since she was rather cold to others. Thanks for being my friend, Seiyu-chan. Don't worry, I'll always be your friend, Naruko, the Uchiha said as she looked at the night skies. Naruko looked at the skies as well. The sun was now fully set and in its place stood the moon, shining ever so dimly in the night sky amidst a sea of clouds. Thank you, Sayuri. Into the great ocean. It has been 5 years since that night spent sitting on the veranda beside her friend while looking at the skies. Not much has changed for the girl in terms of her relationship with Sayuri. The two remained best of friends even after the young blonde left for few years' worth of training under Tsunade and Jiraiya. Aside from that, Naruko's life had been rather normal. She trained, she studied, and she did missions, made more friends, made even more enemies. Her relationship with her family remained relatively the same, with her still barely seeing them even after 5 years. It was plain, it was repetitive and a bit boring, but it was okay. However, today was different. It was dark and cloudy, as the heavens roared in intervals threatening to rain. Today she was just given the news of an event that happened months ago. Her father figure Jiraiya died, killed by his very own student who was the leader of the very same organization that her parents hunted down. So the girl, now a young woman, stood in front of a stone memorial, her hand tracing at one name engraved upon the stone of heroes. She was wearing an open zip-up jacket with its neck and shoulder and sleeves colored black while the other parts were colored orange. Beneath the open jacket the girl was wearing a black sports bra and a mesh shirt that covered her well-toned flat stomach. The girl was also wearing an orange skirt on top of a pair of black shorts along with black stockings that went just above her knees. To finish of her attire, she was also wearing a pair of white shinobi sandals. She also still had the same twin-tailed hair-styled hair tied up by red ribbons that she had when she was younger, albeit it was now longer, stopping just above her hips. Baka Gigi, don't you know Tsunade Ba-chan got pregnant? The girl asked, tears streaming down the side of her face. Who knew you still had it inside you, huh? She chuckled, closing her eyes as she recalled the apparent fate of the man who stood against a self-proclaimed god. They said his body fell deep into the ocean. You always did say you want to go back to the ocean one day, Naruto said, smiling as she sensed another presence arriving in the area. Turning her head around, the girl saw a very familiar young woman with porcelain white skin and long raven black hair tied to a high ponytail. She was wearing a lavender-colored long-sleeved shirt that was open at the torso, showing of white bandages that were wrapped around her s. She was also wearing dark blue pants with a purple rope-like belt around her waist tied up in a bow, where her sheathed shakudo rested. Hello, Sayuri-chan. Hello, Naru-chan. Sayuri replied, her voice low and solemn. Hey, no need for you to be gloomy too, said Naruto as she smiled at her friend. If I know Arojiji, he'd rather not have beautiful girls like us looking sad over his death. She joked as she walked towards her friend and patted her back. Are you okay, Naru-chan? You know, it's fine now, Sayu. There's no use on staying here any longer and crying about. I don't want to be like Kakashi-sensei, you know. Yeah, you wouldn't want to openly read those smut you have in public, right? Baka Sayu. The girl blushed. Don't say that, she said, covering her friend's mouth with her hands. Hi, replied Sayuri. So why are you here, Sayu? I thought you were in a mission? Naruto asked as she walked back towards the monument. I just got back actually. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her eyes landed on the memorial stone. I met Itachi on the village gates before he left on a mission. He told me you were in the village. She took a few steps towards the monument. So you didn't tell me why you're here? The Uchiha smiled. Well, I'm here to check up on a friend. Thank you, Naruto said as her eyes landed on her sensei's name, recalling the moments she spent with him in the past, all the good times and the bad times. She smiled sadly. Baka Jiji, she said before recalling a certain memory of the past. A promise made beside a river in Mizu no Kuni. You know, Sayu. Naruto started grabbing the attention of her close friend. Jiraiya Jiji told me one of his dreams. Is it the dream of peace that Hokage-sama talked about during Jiraiya-sama's obituary? No, a different dream, Naruto said as she shook her head before turning towards Sayuri. A dream to travel across the oceans, to travel in the lands far beyond the elemental nations, to return to the place without ninjas. That certainly sounds like a unique place, nay Sayuri-chan? Yeah? Would you like to go on an adventure with me? The pigtailed blonde asked with a bright smile on her face. Into the great ocean. A week later, inside the Hokage's office, one Namikaze D. Minato, Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, currently acknowledged as the most powerful Kage among the elemental nations, sat behind his desk, eyebrows twitching as he read over the note in front of him. He didn't really know how much time has already passed since this note was placed in front of his desk, nor did he know how it was placed without anyone noticing. As for the note's content, it held the heartfelt message from his daughter. A daughter that he admits he spent little to no time with because of current war effort against Akatsuki. Hey Hokage-sama, going on an adventure to the lands beyond the ocean. I dragged Sayuri along, don't know when we'll be back. See you when I see you, ciao. Naruto the Yondaime sighed as he started rubbing his temples. He expected Naruto to react negatively to the news of Jiraiya's death, but he didn't expect her to react like this. Not in his wildest dreams. Shaking his head, he pressed a button on his desk. Why did this have to happen now when the war against Akatsuki was almost at its end? Why couldn't she have waited after they defeated the last few remaining members of the group, Pain, Konan, Kisame, and Sasori? The door then opened as a bespectacled woman carrying a clipboard walked in. Yes, Hokage-sama? Could you call Kakashi for me? Tell him to be here in 5 minutes, and if he's even late for a second, he'll be demoted to genin immediately, he told his secretary, who nodded and left the room. 3 minutes later, a man with gravity-defying white hair wearing a black mask covering the bottom part of his face as well as the Konoha forehead protector covering his left eye. Along with that, he wore the standard Konoha Junin outfit, appeared in a puff of smoke. Hikate Kakashi reporting for duty, Hokage-sama. Kakashi, I've got a mission for US rank, Minato said as he handed Kakashi the very same note he held in hand. Kakashi took the note. What is th? The man's sweat dropped. Really? She left and dragged along my student just like that? Yeah, she's really like her mother sometimes. I'm guessing you want me to go after her? Minato smiled as he placed his elbows on the desk, his hands folding over each other. Yes, and take a team with you. Sensei. Where exactly is this land beyond the ocean? Well, Kakashi, did you ever really think that the elemental nations was the only place that existed within this wide world? Minato asked as his student unsurprisingly nodded to his question. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, Kakashi, we're not. There are other islands out there over the seas. Jiraiya-sensei told me briefly about them in the past. I'm sure he told Naruto the same thing, and that probably where she's heading. Kakashi said while nodding. I guess I'll go look for a team. I'll be sure to bring her back soon. The copy nin said, eyes smiling before disappearing in a puff of white smoke, leaving behind Minato alone in his office. Out of all the times, why now Naruto? He asked as he deflated in his chair. He was really lucky that they were in a month-long mission raiding Akatsuki bases right now, or else he'd have to deal with the fury of the girls' mothers and brothers. Into the great ocean a few months later, on board a ship that sailed gently in the middle of the calm waters of a little-known part of the world called East Blue. Sitting in the bow of this huge ship was none other than a certain blonde girl, smiling along as she enjoyed the cool breeze of the ocean. Bwahahaha! Naruto laughed out as she stretched her hands, tempted to cry out she was the queen of the world. The world is such a wide place, she said as her eyes gazed on the waters of the seas. She really was lucky that it only took her and Seiyu a few days to find one ship in Mizu no Kuni that apparently sailed to the land beyond the elemental nations. Speaking of Sayuri. Yeah, the world is such a wide place, filled with water, said the Ravenet, who was walking towards the bow. Really, at first Sayuri was adamant in not joining Naruto in her insane escapade, but the Uzumaki literally begged her to come along with those pleading puppy dog eyes. Damn puppy dog eyes that made her Sharingan pale in comparison. It was as if those eyes caught her in some form of genjutsu that took away her ability to say no to the blonde. I can't believe you convinced me to come with you. I mean, we're basically missing nins now. What will Itachi ni say? Ero Gigi did have a term for criminal of the sea, she deadpanned. Oh, and what was that? He called them pirates. Naruto cupped her chin. Should we start calling ourselves pirates as well? I don't know why, but for some reason I feel like I'd rather be called a ninja than a pirate, said Sayuri. You know, for some reason I agree with you. The girl scratched the back of her head and chuckled. Something about ninjas being cooler than pirates. Sayuri nodded. Hey Naru, do you think we'll reach land soon? I mean, I'm getting sick and seeing nothing but the East Blue seas. What the hell is an East Blue? Naruto asked. Sayuri found herself palming her face while she sighed. You spaced out when the captain told us about this world, didn't you? Yep, Naruto cheerfully said, his eyes smiling as she looked at her friend. Naruto, the world is made mostly of water, and right now we're in the East Blue since the elemental nations is apparently located far within the seas. The girl said, still palming her face, before paused and taking in a deep breath. The sea is divided into 5 oceans called East, North, South, West Blues, and the Grand Line. They are divided by a gigantic continent that stretches around the world from north to south in the calm belts where gigantic monsters called, she paused and gestured her fingers into quotation marks. Sea kings, which I still don't believe, by the way, nest. She then looked at her friend and froze as tick mark appeared on the back of her head. Apparently during her lecture her friend decided it was better to just fall asleep. Bonk! The loud sound of Sayuri's fist hitting Naruto's head echoed throughout the area. By now the crew of the ship were already familiar with the sound. Huh? Yeah, what about those sea ponies? Naruto randomly muttered out, her brain still half asleep. Naruto, I swear you're going to get yourself killed because of your carelessness one of these days. Ma, as long as you look out for me everything will be fine. I think I really just subconsciously joined you because someone needs to get you out of trouble. Ho, you two really are lively. A voice said, coming from the Konoha nins said, making them turn their heads towards the speaker. It was the captain of the ship, an old man with a long scruffy white beard wearing a blue coat over a black shirt. He has a pipe on his mouth containing some form of tobacco that he constantly smoked. Hello GJII. Hello Captain San. Ladies. The man bowed lightly as he took a puff from his pipe. We're about to reach dock in about 30 minutes or so. Really? Naruto and Sayuri said in unison, shocking the old man. Despite her rather nonchalant attitude, Naruto was actually like Sayuri in the sense of that she was in desperate need to return to land sometime soon. Ho. The man chuckled. Yes, we're docking in a place called Orange Town. Cool, cheered Naruto as she pumped her fists in the air. Actually, if you look closely you can see it from here, the old man said as he pulled out a small telescope from his pocket before handing it to Naruto, who immediately looked in it. So what do you see? Asked Sayuri. Hey Gigi. Yes. Why do I see this one ship with a strange mast with the symbol of skull and crossbones with the skull having something like a red nose on it? What? Sayuri and the captain asked for different reasons. Sayuri was generally confused, but the captain on the other hand was already paling. Yeah, and it's like pointing one of those cannon thingies at us. Pirates, the old captain said as he dropped his pipe. Huh, so that's a pirate ship. I didn't expect it to look so weird, Naruto said as she handed the telescope to Sayuri, who looked through it. Huh, it fired something, the Uchiha said. What? The captain asked in shock as a huge red ball with the mark of the ship's Jolly Roger sailed through the air. Having no idea what it was, Naruto and Sayuri just stared at it curiously as the round object hit their ship on the upper deck. No. The captain shouted out as the ship was suddenly covered in bright light coming from the ball. Boom! The ball exploded, devastating a good part of the ship. There was fire everywhere as the people on board screamed and panicked. What the heck? Naruto shouted in shock as she jumped off her seat and looked at the damage caused to the ship. Another one is coming, Sayuri said as she saw another ball heading towards the ship. This time she didn't even bother to wait for it to make contact. The Ravenet jumped to the bow of the ship, her left hand already encased in blue chirping lightning. The girl's eyes changed, revealing two red orbs with 3 tomos in each as she trusted her left hand to the sky. Sayuri. I know, Chidori Iso. 1,000 birds sharp spear, the girl said as the current in her hand changed into the form of a long spear that shot out from her hand, hitting the explosive ball as it sailed just above their ship. Boom! The second ball exploded, rocking the entire ship. Gigi, do we have any escape boats? Asked Naruto. Yes, we have a few of them, enough for everyone on the ship. The girl nodded as she crossed her fingers, creating 6 Bunshin, shadow clone, around her. Gather everyone. Get them on the escape boat, then escape. Hi. The clones said as they ran towards the other parts of the ship. Gigi. She looked at the wide-eyed captain who had his jaw open. Get everyone to safety, she said as the sound of another explosion covered the ship. What are you two? The captain asked as he looked at the 2 girls. Even though he often sailed to the elemental nations, he never did see what those shinobi were capable of. Are you devil fruit users? He asked. Devil fruit, what the heck is that? Naruto asked as she turned her attention to Sayuri, who was busy firing waves upon waves of sharp electric senbons at the balls. I don't know what that is, but we're shinobi, she said as she waved her hand, creating her own version of her friend's attack, unknowingly using the powers of a fruit she ate ages ago. Shimabashira, ice needles, the girl said as she sent a volley of ice needles at another approaching cannonball, making it explode. Unbelievable, the captain said in shock as he felt a hand on his back. Turning around, he saw a perfect replica of the blonde girl. Gigi, you're the only one left, we need to go, she said as she pointed to a nearby lifeboat. What about those 2? The captain asked while pointing at the 2 kunoichi. Don't worry about them, Gigi, the clone said as the man reluctantly followed her to the lifeboat. The moment the captain reached the small lifeboat was released to the sea, the clone dispelled. Soon enough, the sound of a loud explosion echoed in the air as the front of the ship got hit by one of the cannonballs, covering it blaze in fire. The captain looked in shock as his ship slowly burned and sank to the sea, wondering of the fate of the 2 that remained on the ship. Into the great ocean from within the ship that shot out the volley of cannonballs towards the innocent ship, a slim yet muscular man with blue hair, donning the appearance of a clown while wearing an orange pirate hat and coat, laughed loudly. You see, that's the power of the buggy balls, he boasted out as he and his crew laughed loudly. Orangetown stood no chance. That ship stood no chance. I'm telling you guys that with these balls and my bara no mi. Chop chop fruit. We shall conquer the whole East Blue Gia, ha 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 ha. The man turned to his crew. Our men have already finished setting up our temporary base in that town, right? Yes, Captain, we just need to put the cannon in town like you said, one of the. Good, then grab it along with the balls. He smirked. Let's go, Buggy said before he started laughing out loudly as he walked towards the edge of his ship while his men dragged along the cannon and the balls. The poor bastard really had no idea that he picked the wrong ship to sink that day. Into the great ocean elsewhere. I'm so hungry. A teen with black hair wearing a straw hat along with a red vest and blue shorts and sandals said as he looked up at the sky while lying on the hardwood floor of his small boat. I'm starving as well. A man with cropped green hair wearing a plain white shirt, a green haramaki, and black pants said as he held on to his 3 swords while lying on the floor much like the teen. Oh, a bird. The green-haired man said as he saw the shadow of a bird flying in the sky. Zoro, let's go eat the bird. How are you going to eat it, Luffy? Just watch, Luffy said as he extended his hands and grabbed the mast of the small ship. This is my specialty. Gomu Gomu rocket. The boy shouted out as he flung himself off the boat towards the wide sky towards the bird. Can't believe he thought of doing that, Zoro said, sweat dropping as he looked at his captain, the boy who has eaten the devil fruit Gomu Gomu no Mi and became a rubber man. Chomp. Ah. Luffy shouted out as the bird he has planned on eating, which was apparently 3 times his size, opened its beak and snapped it shut at the boy's head. Huh? Zoro said in shock, not believing what he just saw. Ahellllpppppp, screamed Luffy. You idiot, Zoro shouted back as he grabbed the paddles of the ship and began rowing furiously as he chased after the bird in flight. What the heck are you doing? Zoro asked as he kept on rowing. Into the great ocean. From beneath the waves of the calm blue sea a familiar Ravenet shot out, breathing heavily as she slowly stood on top of the very seas itself. You're really lucky that I'm with you, she said as she placed her hand within the sea and pulled out her blonde friend. Sorry for not being able to swim or water walk, Naruto said as she kept coughing out more sea water. The Uchiha just shook her head while looking towards the direction of the pirate ship. Let me guess, we're going there next to pay them back, aren't we? What gave you that idea, Seiyu? Because I know you and the fact that I'm mad as well. Why are you mad? Is it because they attacked us out of nowhere? Or is it because they sunk our ship? Or is it because I almost drowned and died? Asked the curious blonde between her coughing fits. Because they got my hair wet, Sayuri answered as she started walking towards the port of Orange Town. What? Naruto asked, shocked that her friend cared more about her hair than her. And almost killed you, Sayuri, she added as she watched her friend pouting on the side. It really was fun to tease her from time to time. I'm so going to kick the ass of whoever blew up our ship, declared Naruto. Hi, but first let's get to dry land first, said Sayuri as she placed Naruto on her back, piggybacking her as she walked towards Orange Town. If the two paid more attention they would have noticed a huge bird flying above the sky with a serpentine in its beak. Why am I here again? The one and only Straw Hat Luffy asked while he found himself bound tightly with rope and locked inside a steel cage. Oh yeah, the teen said as he recalled what happened. Earlier that day, after managing to escape from the grasp of that evil bird, Luffy found himself in between a few pirates and an orange-haired girl who called her captain before running away. He was confused for a moment before the pirates tried to mess with him and in extension his hat. Let it be known that Monkey D. Luffy does not like it when you mess with his hat, as the pirates found out firsthand after the rubber boy began beating the ever-living shit out of them before leaving them bruised and beaten. The girl then returned and introduced herself as Nami, a thief who steals only from pirates. The girl told Luffy her dream of getting 100 million belly for the sake of buying a certain town, as well as mentioning that she had good navigational skills. After hearing those words, Luffy immediately asked Nami to join his crew. Nami had an outburst before ranting on about how she hated pirates and only loved oranges and money. Strangely though, she agreed on teaming up with him. He really should have seen the betrayal coming. The moment he turned his back on her, the navigator tied him with the rope and brought him to Buggy the Clown, using him as a bargaining chip so she could join the clown's crew and eventually steal their treasure. That mean girl. I can't believe I asked her to join my crew, Luffy huffed out as he sat inside the cage as he watched the pirates celebrate the fact that Nami joined their crew and that they finally got their map of the Grand Line back, a map which Nami stole, mind you. How'd I escape? Luffy said as he sat still in though. I know. He shouted out before tilting his head sidewards, opening his mouth, and biting down on the steel bars of the cage. As he chewed on the bars, one word passed through his mind. Genius. Into the great ocean. Why can't you water walk again? Sayuri asked as she finally reached land after an agonizing 20-minute run on the seas. However, after sailing through the seas for months, the Uchiha couldn't help but feel a bit happy after finally stepping on dry land. Because, shut up, Naruto whispered as she got of her friend's back. It wasn't her fault that she couldn't walk water for some bizarre reason. If she had someone to blame, it would be some malevolent writer who enjoys her misery. The Uchiha just rolled her eyes before looking around the area. It certainly looked different from the elemental nations. The houses looked as if they were made of both wood and earth, unlike the ones back home which were just made of trees. For a town, this looks kinda empty, right? Naruto finished as the two both observed the empty streets of the town. From what the captain told them, towns, specifically port towns like this one, usually had a lot of people in them, but right now the two couldn't spot a single living being for miles. Yeah, they might be hiding from those pirates that destroyed our ship. Or they might have abandoned the town to escape from them, said Sayuri as she surveyed the area, noting that houses were open with their doors either broken or unhinged. These pirates are like bandits, she said with distaste. We should deal with them soon, said the Uchiha as she crossed her arms over her chest. Naruto smiled as she placed her hands on her hip. Yup, we'll kick their asses for destroying Gigi's ship. Then we steal their ship before sailing the seas. Bwahaha. Steal their ship? Do you even know how to sail that thing? Nope, but we'll manage. Sayuri sighed. Naruto, to fully man a ship you're going to need several crew members like a navigator, a repairman, several cabin boys, an actual captain who mans the ship, and a first mate who acts as second in command. Add a musician, a cook, and someone who can use those cannon thingies, and probably a scientist, Naruto added as she cupped her chin, adopting a thinking pose while pacing around in circles. I can be the crew's medic since Tsunade Bachan did teach me a bunch of stuff. As for captain, that will definitely be me, and you're going to be my first mate. Naruto, before you even think about musicians or scientists, for whatever reason you want one, we need a navigator before we even set sail. Sayuri said before her eyes widened in realization. Naru, where are you even planning on going? I don't have a destination in mind, the girl said as she stopped walking in circles and looked at her friend at the moment the wind began blowing. Naruto smiled as she looked up in the warm blue sky. I guess anywhere the wind blows, it doesn't really matter. I just want to see as much of this part of the world. If possible, I want to see what lies in the end of these vast seas. You really are too impulsive. You should think things through next time. Moo, are you calling me stupid? Naruto said as she pouted. No, I'm not calling you stupid, Sayuri said as she shook her head and hands in front of her. If she knew one thing about her friend, it was the fact that she hated being called stupid. Last time someone did that and called her stupid while relating it to her natural hair color, well, the poor bastard ended up in the hospital for months. Chakra-enhanced strength was definitely scary stuff. MHH. Okay, I believe you, the blonde said as she kept her hands planted on her hips, a small smile slowly forming in her face. Nay, Seiyu. Yeah, do you feel them? She asked. The Uchiha grunted out as she reached for her Chikudo, around 10 or 15. Naruto smiled as she cracked her knuckles. Yeah, she said as she felt several vibrations from the ground. In a matter of seconds a dozen men arrived, each clothed rather plainly with a shirts, pants, a bandana tied in their heads, as well as a sash on their waists. All of them were grinning madly as they wielded swords and eyed the two kunoichi. Guys, look at what we have here, one of the men said as he looked at the two. Hehehehe, who would have known there were two beautiful women in this town, he said as the other men started snickering while slowly surrounding the girls. Captain Buggy would definitely like it if we bring these girls to him. Another pirate murmured while smiling perversely, but we could definitely have fun with them first before bringing them to the captain, right? Yeah, another said while grinning lecherously. Captain Buggy, who's that? Naruto asked as she tilted her head to the side. Kekaki, he's the man who's going to rule the East Blue, one pirate said as he licked his lips, the man you're going to call boss really soon, blonde. Is this Buggy person you speak of the one that blew up our ship? Sayuri asked as she slowly drew her Chikudo. Oh, so you belong to that ship? Yeah, captain needed something as target practice for the Buggy balls, the man then smirked. Oh, you want to fight Ojo Yu-chan? He said as he watched Sayuri draw her Chikudo. You might want to put that back in, we don't want to damage you. He didn't even finish what he was planning on saying as his head rolled to the ground. His body stood still for a moment, squirting fountains of blood before falling to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut off. Wah! Another pirate said in shock as he saw the ravenet standing behind his fallen comrade's sword already drawn with blood flowing down its blade. The girl then disappeared in a burst of speed before reappearing on front of the man and stabbing him through the head with the blade before kicking his body away. By then the other pirates have finally caught up that they might have bitten off more than they can chew, but before they could even attack or run away, the ravenet already finished slicing them apart with her blade. In a matter of seconds the small group was down to its last member, a small man wearing a blue sleeveless shirt and a yellow hat. "Gah, don't kill me," the man said as he dropped his sword and laid on the ground fetal position. "If you tell me where your boss is, then I'll think about it," Sayuri told the man as she kept her blade pointed at him while ignoring the smell of urine coming from the man. "They're on the rooftop of the bar in the middle of the town." The man cried out. "Now let me go, you promised, right?" He said in tears. "You wanted to capture me and my friend, then us." "I didn't promise you anything," she smirked sadistically. "I said I'll think about it." She quickly swung her chakudo, slicing the man's head off. "And I thought about not letting you live," she added before flicking the blood off the blade and sheathing it. It was cold, quick, brutal, and efficient, truly befitting for a shinobi. "Seu, why did you have to hog them all? I didn't even get to fight one of them," Naruto complained as she stomped on the ground. Naruto wasn't new to her friend's brutality when it came to dealing with enemies, especially the ones that make a pass or perverted remarks about them. The blonde concluded that Sayuri picked that up after years of training under Itachi, Kakashi, and Anko. Scary part was that she was basically a combination of the three. Calm and cold like a perfect Uchiha, strong and sometimes sarcastic like Kakashi, then extremely sadistic like Anko. It was an unholy combination that made her friend really scary from time to time, but then again it was her way of being protective in her own sadistic and brutal way. "They were weak, Naru, they weren't worth your time. If you want to can take down their captain, he's probably stronger than them." "Fine," Naruto said, pouting as she started walking away. "Wait, Naruto, where are you going?" "To the bar." "Do you even know where the bar is?" "Yep, it's in the middle of town," Naruto said cheerfully as she continued walking away. "You don't even know where the middle of the town is," Sayuri whispered while shaking her head before chasing after the blonde. If those pirates were as strong as the men she just took out, then she was sure that there was nothing to worry about. After all, if she could take them out so easily, then she didn't really want to think of the fate of those poor fools in Naruto fought them. After all, the whimsical blonde was stronger than her. As the two walked away, a certain green-haired swordsman arrived and raised a brow when he saw the gruesome scene. "What the hell happened here?" he said as he saw the piles of dead body in the area. He wasn't a newcomer to seeing dead people, since even he had to kill people when he worked as a bounty hunter, but it was the first time he saw bodies in this condition. His eyes focused on the cause of their deaths. They were cut perfectly, probably by a sword. "Whoever did this must be a good swordsman," he said, smiling lightly as he held on his three swords. He was going to enjoy fighting whoever it was who did this. "Okay, find Luffy first, then challenge swordsman later," he said before running towards the opposite direction, going even further away from the bar where his captain and where the swordswoman he was looking for were heading. "Into the great ocean." "How's it going, boss?" asked Nami as she crouched down in front of the steel cage. "Shut up and let me out," grumbled the teen out as he kept biting on the steel bars. "Grumble, grumble, I'm hungry, gimme something to eat," he pleaded as he looked at Nami with watery puppy dog eyes. Nami sighed. Despite being a thief, she was generally a nice person and couldn't help but feel guilty on framing Luffy. "Here," she said while placing a huge chunk of meat on stick inside the cage. "Thanks," Luffy said as he ate the meat in one bite. "You're a nice person. I guess I'll let you join my crew." "I don't want to join you, idiot," Nami shouted out. "But don't worry, if my plan works out I'll let you go, since I really have nothing against you." "Gyahahaha, you've got yourself a good follower here, Gaki," said the loud and irritating voice of Buggy the Clown as he walked towards the cage and stopped just a few steps behind Nami. "She's not my follower, at least not yet." Yes, you're probably in denial since she betrayed you," the clown said as he chugged down an entire mug's worth of booze. Even though I got my map back, I still have to show you what happens to those that dares to steal from me. He added, breath stinking with booze. Oh, so you're going to let me go? Yeah, I'm going to like hell, I'm going to let you go. Buggy shouted as he tossed his mug on the ground, smashing it to piece. Gyahaha booyies, prepare the Buggy special cannon. The clown shouted out as his crew cheered. Wah! Yahoo! Let's blow him to bits. Came the various cheers off the clown's crew members, clearly intoxicated from the booze they consumed. But first let's show him how strong my balls are, Buggy said, smiling as he began chugging down another mug of beer. There was a few seconds of stunned silence as everyone on the bar's roof just stared at the clown. Huh, what's the matter? Asked Buggy as he looked at his crew and prisoner. Boss, how exactly are you planning on showing how strong your balls are? Asked Buggy's first mate Momji, a man with white hair shaped like a teddy bear. He was wearing a fur vest that stopped just above his stomach. He was also wearing blue pants and a yellow sash tied around his waist. Why, by shooting it at his face, Buggy answered. Every member of his crew, intoxicated or not, took a step back after his comment. Realizing something was wrong, Buggy raised an eyebrow. What the hell are you? He started before realizing what he said. Morons. I meant the Buggy balls, the mother freaking cannon balls. Ah, said the crew simultaneously as they bopped their fist on an open palm. Just shut up and fire the goddamn ball on those houses, he said as one of the crew members did as he ordered and fired the special cannon ball that shot through 7 houses, leveling them to the ground. Boom came the loud echoing sound of the cannonball finally exploding while the houses fell on the ground in ruins. This is the power of my balls. A power so great that it can wipe out an entire village in a few shots. With this and my bara no mi, chop chop fruit, I will conquer not only the whole East Blue but as well as the Grand Line. Captain, you're saying it again, Kabaji, a tall slender man with black hair that covered half of his face while wearing a long purple coat and white pants, said. Doing what? Never mind, boss, the man said as he just shook his head and stood back. Now Nami. Buggy started as his crew pointed the cannon at the steel cage that held Luffy. Fire my balls using this cannon and kill your old captain. With this I will finally accept your full loyalty as a member of my crew. Kill him. I don't think it's necessary. Let's just ignore that guy and go back to drinking, boss, Nami pleaded as she started sweating. Kill him, Buggy ordered, his tone cold and serious, showing a great contrast to his normally goofy self. Nami stood there for a moment, hesitant. Could she really kill someone that she just dragged along? If she shoots the cannon, the kid inside the cage will definitely die. If she did that, then she'd be no different from them. From the very people that killed her mother figure and forced her to join their crew. Oi Nami, stop spoiling the fun and just shoot the damn thing, Buggy ordered as his crew continued to cheer out. Your hand is shaking, Nami, Luffy said, surprising the orange-haired thief. You lack the strength given out by a pirate's oath, he added as he smiled ever so brightly. Ho, strength by a pirate's oath, is that killing weak and innocent people? No, it's the idea of being strong enough to put your life on the line. Oi, stop wasting our time, just fire the thing, one of Buggy's crew mate, a man with a clown-like appearance, said as he lighted up a match and approached the cannon. Before he could even light the fuse, Nami already pulled out her weapon of choice, a collapsible staff that she separated in 3 pieces and strapped in her tight. Name quickly joined the 3 segments together, forming the light blue staff before spinning around and smacking the pirate right at his face, busting up his lips and cracking his nose in the process. What? The crowd shouted out as Nami looked at her hands, shocked that she just blew her cover to protect a no-name pirate that she just met. What the hell do you think you're doing, Nami? Buggy angrily shouted out. You're saving me. Thank you, said Luffy. Shut up, Nami said as she looked at Luffy before shifting her gaze at the furious Buggy. It was all an act. I never wanted to join your stinking crew. Pirates killed someone precious to me and I'd rather die than join pirates like you, she said, ever vigilant as she held on her staff. Ah, the fuse is burning, Luffy shouted as he spotted the burning fuse. Apparently the match that one crew member lit earlier fell on the fuse. Crap, Luffy shouted again as he began chomping down on the steel bar, desperate to break free. Get her, Buggy ordered as 4 of his crew members drew their weapons and charged at Nami. Shit, Nami cursed out as she swung her staff horizontally towards Buggy's henchmen. Missed us, they shouted as two of them backstepped while the other two jumped over the attack. I can't die this way, shouted Luffy as he watched the fuse steadily burning. No, Nami shouted as she tossed her staff at the pirates before turning around and making a run for the cannon. Erk, she cried out as she sat on the ground before stopping the burning fuse with her bare hands. Behind you, Luffy cried out as the four men brought down their weapons on a defenseless Nami. In a blink on an eye, two figures appeared behind Nami. One was green-haired swordsman named Roronoa Zoro, who was holding a sheathed blade that he smashed on the faces of two pirates. The other a beautiful Ravenet whose long hair was tied in a ponytail. The girl had her own sword drawn as she slashed down two of the pirates. Just how many of you are going to attack one girl? The two said in unison as the four pirates collapsed on the ground. Zoro. And, who are you? Luffy asked as he titled his head to the side and stared at the newcomer. My name is Sayuri, and, said Kunoichi as she looked around in the area before visibly deflating while she sighed, I'm looking for somebody. Into the great ocean. Earlier that day, Naruto, Sayuri called out as she ran along the empty streets of Orange Town and looked for her friend. How she lost a girl who was only walking a few steps ahead while wearing cami shoot-at-me orange-colored clothing she had no idea. Luffy. The girl stopped running and raised her brow as she heard another person running around and shout out someone's name. Luffy. The voice shouted again, getting louder in the process. What's going on? Sayuri asked to herself as she began walking along the streets while her eyes narrowed and focused on a figure she saw running towards her. Luffy, is that you? The voice shouted again, making Sayuri stop on her tracks and tilt her head to the side as she saw a mop of green hair which definitely didn't belong to her friend. Oi Lu, wait, who are you? The green-haired swordsman asked as he stopped a few meters in front of the girl after finally noticing that she wasn't his captain. Isn't it rude to ask for someone's name without introducing yourself first? Sayuri asked as she looked closely at the man. He was taller than her average sized with a muscular frame. He was also slightly tanned and carried around 3 swords tied in his green haramaki. Roronoa Zoro. The man introduced himself as his hands inched closer from his swords. He just gave one look at the girl and noted the chakudo tied along her waist. If what he was thinking was right, then she was probably responsible for slaughtering those pirates that they found earlier. I see, well then, nice meeting you Zoro-san, but I have to go since I'm looking for a friend of mine, the kunoichi calmly said as her free hand also inched towards her chakudo. She wasn't sure of who the man was, but there was a high chance he was one of those pirates that she killed earlier. I see, well I'm looking for my friend too. Did you see him? Zoro asked as he began describing Luffy. He has black hair and a goofy grin on his face. He also wears a straw hat over his head. Sorry, I've never seen anyone like him, she answered before asking her own question. How about you? Did you perhaps spot a girl around my age with long blonde pigtailed hair? She's always wearing orange, so it's really easy to spot her. Sorry, never saw anyone like that. I see, but I did see a bunch of dead pirates earlier, Zoro said as Sayuri's eyes narrowed even further, hand already placed firmly along the handle of her chakudo. Oh, and what about those dead pirates? Were they your friends? No, I don't know any of them, but I did notice that whoever killed them must be one hell of a swordsman, or in this case a swordswoman, Zoro said as he too placed his hands over his blades. And I'm always up for fighting someone good with the sword. And why is that? Sayuri asked while raising an eyebrow, genuinely curious about the man's intentions. Well, because I want to be the greatest swordsman in the world, Zoro answered without hesitation. Sayuri chuckled lightly, making Zoro frown. Don't worry, I'm not laughing at your dream, she said. It's just that I never knew that anyone else could say their dreams out proudly with a straight face, she said as she drew her chakudo, making Zoro tense up. Well then, let me tell you my dreams since you told me yours. The girl smiled. It was a kind and genuine smile. I want to stand by my friend's side and help her fulfill her wish, she said as she recalled one of her most precious memories, one involving 2 girls, and a promise of a lifetime. It's nothing special really, it's just my way of paying her back since she helped me achieve my old dream. It's admirable, said Zoro as he pulled out one of his swords, but before he could even place its shaft on his mouth and draw the other two swords, a loud explosion echoed along the area. What the hell? The two said in unison as they directed their attention towards a large inferno. Their eyes then followed the path of destruction to its source, a large cannon perched along the rooftop of a nearby building. Ah, Luffy, Zoro said, remembering that he was looking for his captain. Quickly sheathing his blade, Zoro started running towards the bar, leaving behind the lone Kunoichi. I guess there's a good chance you're there, she said as she channeled chakra on her feet and kicked off the ground, running beside the pirate hunter. Oi, why are you following me? Zoro asked. I'm not following you, we're just going towards the same direction, she said as she continued running beside the swordsman. Into the great ocean, Zoro. A bunch of rough-looking members of Buggy's crew said in shock as they stared fearfully at the infamous pirate hunter, while the others had their eyes set on the beautiful brunette in front of them. Hell, even Buggy was staring at the girl for a moment. What the hell, Luffy? Last time I saw you were caught by a bird and now you're stuck in a cage. Is this your idea of fun? He asked. Shishishishi, I got caught. Hey Zoro, can you help me out of here? Luffy asked the swordsman. Just beside the two, the Ravenet flicked the blood off her Chakuto before sheathing it while turning towards the shocked orange-haired girl. Are you all right? She asked as she extended her hand towards Nami. I'm okay, Nami replied as she stared at the Ravenet in front of her while grabbing the extended hand. She couldn't help but admire the girl for effortlessly killing the pirates she couldn't even touch with ease. Good, Sayuri said as she smiled and helped the girl up. Would you mind answering a simple question? Sayuri asked kindly. Ah yes, have you seen a girl with blonde hair styled in pigtails? She's wearing a bright orange jacket that's open along with an orange skirt. Sorry, I haven't seen anyone like that, Nami admitted as she saw the Ravenet sigh once more. Where the heck are you, Naruto? Sayuri whispered before hearing the murmurings of various pirates in the area. That's Roronoa, Zoro. What is the pirate hunter doing here? Wow, who's the chick? Is she the pirate hunter's girlfriend? Damn, she's hot. Woo, I wonder if she'd mind using my sword. Sayuri just rolled her eyes while filtering out all the perverted comment, making sure to make a small note to kill the perverts later. Miss, she said as she looked at the orange-haired girl. Nami, she said, realizing that the Ravenet wanted to learn her name. Nami, Sayuri nodded. Why are they talking about him? She asked as she pointed at Zoro, who was now in front of a man that strangely enough resembled a clown wearing an orange coat and hat. It seems that even in the furthest of seas someone embraces that heinous color that would get any other ninjas but her fried wearing the color killed. Ah, he must be the crew member Luffy was talking about earlier. Nami said as she stared at Zoro. He's a well-known bounty hunter around East Blue, she said as she looked at Zoro, who was in the middle of an argument with Buggy, who was holding several daggers. Hey you, girl with the black hair, Sayuri heard, making her turn towards the teen stuck inside the steel cage. Hey, my name is Monkey D. Luffy, he said, smiling. Nice to meet you, Sayuri said as she bowed her head lightly. I'm Uchiha Sayuri, she introduced herself. Hey, would you like to join my crew? Luffy asked almost immediately after the girl's introduction. Thank you for the offer, Luffy-san, but I must decline as of now, she answered as she walked towards the huge cannon. But who knows, I might accept it after finding my friend, she said as she channeled chakra in her legs and arms before pushing the cannon towards the direction of Zoro and the pirates. Oi, green hair, get out of the way, Sayuri shouted as she placed a hand on the fuse while channeling Kaden chakra. It didn't really take a genius to figure out how these cannon things worked. Huh, Zoro mumbled out as he looked behind him after slicing Buggy into piece. His eyes widened as he saw the cannon pointed right at him. Judging from the shocked reaction of Buggy's crew, things weren't looking good for them. This is for blowing up our ship, Red Nose. What did you say? The chopped off head of Buggy shouted back, his own eyes widening as he saw the cannonball heading straight at them. Shit, Zoro said as he jumped out of the way of the cannon's firing range just in time to avoid the ball. He was lucky he ran away after slicing Buggy, because if not he would have been caught off guard by the man and his devil fruit ability. Speaking of devil fruit ability, the bisected Buggy's body immediately floated out of the way of the ball just as it exploded. Boom! The loud sound erupted from the cannonball as it tore a good amount of the rooftop as well as covering it with a large amount of smoke, allowing Zoro to drag Luffy's cage with one hand while escaping with Nami and Sayuri. From the wreckage and remains of the rooftop, several body parts floated and joined together, revealing a slightly singed but relatively unharmed Buggy, and boy, he was furious. Those impudent fools. They dared to steal from me and mock me. The clown shouted with rage. He then looked at his remaining crew members. Most of them survived the first blast, much like him. I want them dead, he ordered as his men nodded and left the area. He was going to show these fools just who they are messing with. Into the great ocean. Really? Naruto asked with tears flowing down her eyes as she petted a dog sitting adamantly in front of a pet shop. After separating from Sayuri, she wound up coming across the shop and meeting with the nice dog. Soon after, she met an old man wearing bulky armor who introduced himself as Boodle, the village's mayor. The old man then told her the story of the dog's loyalty towards its master even after his death. The dog stayed in front of his master's pet shop unmoving, unwavering even during the roughest rains or the hottest of days. The dog still remained. The story was enough to bring the kind blonde to a sob fest as she embraced the dog. Yeah, he died long ago. This place here is a treasure to Chow Chow over here. Even when the pirates invaded the town, he stayed here. I just couldn't leave him alone or else he'd starve to death. Roar. What was that? Naruto asked as she released the dog from her hug, making it run a few meters back towards the front of the shop. Gee, that's the beast trainer Moji and his pet lion Richie. What the hell are they doing here? Boodle asked, obviously panicking at the sight of a man riding a huge lion with golden brown fur and pink mane. Oh, there are still people in this town? The man asked as he looked down at the pigtailed blonde and the old man while his lion growled. Ho 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 ho, have you guys perhaps seen a few individuals who dared to attack our group pass by? Nope, no clue, Naruto said as she folded her hands behind her back, uninitiated at the man and his pet. Hey, what's up with that fur hat? It looks cool, where can I buy one? Naruto asked. This is my hair, the man shouted out. Really, that's just weird. And gross, blurg, Naruto said as she brought out her tongue while Boodle, having enough common sense, finally decided to run and hide. So what are you supposed to be? I'm an animal trainer. I can make all the animals in the world obey me, he said as he pointed at Chow Chow, who was still standing fearlessly in front of the shop. Oh, I find that hard to believe, Naruto replied as she thought that there was no way in hell that this man could ever tame the boss of the Toad summons Gamabunta. Heck, half the time that old Yakuza Toad barely listened to her despite signing the Toad contract as well. Speaking of the Toad contract, she was really lucky that she learned of how to block reverse summons from Arrow Gigi before he died, otherwise she was sure she would have been summoned back in Konoha a few days after she and Sayuri left. Well, I'll show it to you, the man ordered his lion to lower itself as he extended his hand towards the dog. Shake boy, Moji ordered, only for his hand to get bitten by the dog. The man shouted as he shook his hand. Stupid dog, you made me look bad, he said as he ordered his lion Richie to attack the dog, raising its gigantic paw. The lion swiped at the poor dog, hitting it in the shoulder and pushing it away. Hey, the man laughed out, only to freeze when he felt the temperature in the area literally drop to near spine-numbingly cold levels. Looking to his side, he saw the blonde, who he chalked up as another regular civilian, standing still, her hair shadowing her eyes as she looked down on the dog. What are you planning on doing? Are you going to attack us? Moji asked as he shivered. It wasn't just him, even the lion Richie was shivering despite its large and furry frame. The girl ignored the beast tamer as her eyes settled on the shaking figure of the white dog that, despite getting wounded, still walked in front of the shop and stood there while barking at the larger lion. Shut up, dog, Moji shouted out, irritation rising on new height as he is constantly ignored by the girl. You know what, Richie? Attack the stupid mutt, he said as he tapped the lion on the back. Richie actually hesitated for a moment before following its master's order. The lion roared as it raised its hand high up into the air before swiping it down towards the dog. Whoosh! Moji's eyes widened before he blinked a few times, not believing what he was seeing. Before his very eyes, the blonde girl had her right hand gripping the gigantic lion's claw while she held the injured dog in hand. I'm giving you one chance to apologize, and only once, the girl said, her tone completely neutral and void of any emotion as her hair kept shadowing her eyes. Why should I apologize, huh? The dog should be the one apologizing to me for not obeying me. The beast tamer snapped back, his mind not working properly due to the panic he felt within. I see, whispered the girl as she kept her right hand gripped on the lion's paw. Don't worry Lion-san, I won't hurt you that much since like the dog here you're just obeying your orders, she said as both the lion and the beast tamer's eyes widened even further as they saw a crystalline sheet of white ice forming around the lion's hand. Kori no Nimari, ice sleep, Naruto whispered out as the ice began spreading rapidly surround the lion. Impossible, Moji screamed out as he jumped off the lion just in time to avoid getting frozen along with the lion. Being the first mate of Buggy, the beast tamer was knowledgeable about the big shots in both the Marines and the pirates, making him well aware of the only person in the world that was said to have the ability to freeze anything in existence. How can you have the same powers as Aokiji? He said in shock as he saw his pet Richie's entire body frozen. I don't know who or what is this Aokiji you're talking about, Naruto said as she slowly walked towards the shaking Moji, shifting her hold on the dog by placing it on her right hand. But I do know that I don't like you, she said as smoke began appearing on her left hand before it was covered in flames. Moji's jaw dropped as he took one step back while gawking at the girl. What the hell, 2 devil fruits? He asked in shock as the blonde kept walking towards her. Hidari Moru, burning left, Naruto shouted out as she channeled more flames and chakra in her left hand before punching the beast tamer in the jaw. She made sure to use her enhanced strength by releasing her chakra with pinpoint timing just as it hit the man's face. Boom! The loud sound echoed in the area as the wind pressure blew fiercely while the foolish beast tamer was sent flying up to the sky by a flaming punch with the force create huge craters. Boodle slowly walked out from his hiding spot, eyes wide, his jaws slightly opened as he slowly processed what he witnessed. What are you? The man asked as he looked at the blonde girl who, unlike how she was a few seconds ago, was now smiling brightly once more. The girl crouched down and gently placed the injured dog on the ground before placing both of her hands along the dog's shoulder. Shozen Jutsu Mystic Palm Technique, the girl whispered as a warm green glow surrounded her hand and the dog's shoulder. In a matter of seconds the wound was gone. Woof, 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 the dog barked as he licked the blonde kunoichi's fingers before running around in a circle. Good boy, Naruto said, making the dog bark once more before it ran away from the shop. What are you? Boodle asked again, still shocked at what he just saw. You can call me a shinobi, Naruto said as she stood up and slowly walked towards the still frozen Richie. Placing her hand along the ice, Boodle could only watch as it melted. You're free to go, Naruto said as the lion sneezed before nodding and running away. The girl turned to the mayor. Nay Boodle, jii mind telling me which way the bar is? Naruto asked. The mayor slowly nodded his head as a smile formed on his face. At last there was finally someone that might drive those pirates away from the village that he and his fellow men built with their very hands. Into the great ocean. What do you mean Moji was defeated? Asked Buggy as he stomped on the ground, not believing for that his second in command was taken out. Sir, his body crashed down one of the houses we were looting. The man hesitated for a second before continuing. He's severely injured, multiple broken bones as well as burns in his face. We don't know if he'll even live through it, the pirate said as he took a step back. Who defeated him? Was it Roronoa or that girl with a sword? Buggy asked impatiently before one of his men who saw the fight took a step forward. The pirate gulped. It was a girl, probably the same age as the female swordsman, the man said as he began sweating. She had this weird power that froze Richie. The man didn't get to finish as Buggy stabbed him in the stomach before pulling it along his waist, opening his stomach. The man screamed out in pain as he dropped down on the ground dead. Grr, Buggy growled out in frustration. Grabs the balls, we're going to destroy this whole place, Buggy ordered as his men nodded and scurried away. That's what you get from lying to me. Only Aokiji can freeze people, and by no means is he a girl, Buggy declared as he kicked the man's corpse away. Hurry up, he shouted as he looked at his men. We're going to dust this place, he declared. Into the great ocean. Inside one of the many abandoned houses in Orange Town, one Roronoa Zoro, pirate hunter extraordinaire, sighed as he sat down a chair. So what are we going to do now? Zoro asked as he looked at Nami, who was sitting on a chair opposite his, and Sayuri, who was leaning on a nearby wall. Nami has generally been pessimistic about the whole situation while Sayuri barely talked since they escaped the rooftop. As for Luffy, well, the straw hat wearing captain decided it was the best time to fall asleep inside his cage if the snot bubble forming on his nose was any indication. I think we should just calm down and leave this village, Nami said. We're outnumbered here 10-1 and they have those cannons. It's staying here would only get us killed, she added, deciding to forego her fixation on the potential treasure that she could get from Buggy's crew. You say that as if 50 or even 100 of those pirates will make a difference, Sayuri said, deciding to cut in the conversation. I know you're strong, but even for you it'll be impossible to pull that off, Nami countered. Having just met the Ravenet, she had no idea about the girl's full capabilities. She said as she twirled her ponytail, and if I know my friend, she's probably heading for rooftop again. Then shouldn't you be worried about her? She's going to get herself killed. Sayuri actually paused and stared at Nami for a second before breaking out in a fit of laughter. Ha 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 ha. She chuckled out as she held onto her stomach while leaning slightly forward. What's so funny? Nami asked as she pouted slightly. Shouldn't you go there and rescue her? Nami, trust me when I tell you that if I go there, the ones needing rescue would be the pirates, not my friend. You seem pretty confident about that, Zoro said as he glanced at the swordswoman. Yeah, because she's stronger than me, she said proudly while keeping her hands crossed on her chest. Munya, Luffy shouted out as his snot bubble exploded. I'm awake, he said before blinking. Why am I still tied up and locked inside a cage? Luffy asked as he looked at the others in the room. Well, I kinda lost the key, Nami admitted as she scratched the back of her head. Zoro, can you slice through the steel bars? Luffy asked as he looked at the pirate hunter. I can't cut through steel, Luffy, Zoro admitted. Then how am I going to get out of here? Allow me, Sayuri said as she pushed herself off the wall and slowly walked towards the steel cage. She passed Zoro for a moment before silently saying, if you want to be the best swordsman in the world, make sure you can do something like this. The girl walked towards the cage while channeling chakra along her hands and blade before drawing it. With one swift motion, the Uchiha sliced through the steel bars, cutting them to pieces before quickly sheathing her sword. She passed by a wide-eyed Zoro and whispered once more, good luck in mastering that, pirate hunter-san, she said as she walked back to her wall and leaned on it. Thank you, Luffy said as he walked out of the cage. Shishishi, now we can go back to that Buggy guy and kick his ass. Are you serious, Luffy? Why would we do that? Nami asked as she walked towards Luffy and untied the ropes that bound him. Because I don't like that Buggy since he's destroying this town. The boy then smiled innocently, and he has a map to our next destination, the Grand Line, so we're going to steal that map from him, he added as he placed his hands on his hips. So will you join us, Nami? You need the map too, right? He asked as he extended his hand towards the girl. I'm not going to become a pirate, she said before grabbing the boy's hand. Rather than that, let's say we're just partners cooperating with each other to achieve our goals. Shishishi, good enough, Luffy said before turning his attention to the Ravenet, who was once again standing silently on her wall. How about you, Sayuri, would you join our group? The girl grunted out before her eyes widened. Everybody duck, she shouted out as she jumped down on the ground. Everyone quickly followed her advice and ducked just in time as a cannonball smashed through the wall of the house before exiting on the other side. Out now, Sayuri said as Luffy, Zoro, and Nami nodded. The four immediately ran out of the house just as it came crashing down. That's it, I'm going kick that clown's ass, Luffy huffed out as he looked at the direction of the bar while cracking his knuckles. I thought you'd never say that, Zoro said as he pulled the black bandana tied around his left biceps before readying it around his head. You two are reckless, Nami said as her palm met her face. Why don't you talk them out of it, Sayuri? She added as she looked towards Sayuri only to notice that she was already gone. Wait, where did she go? Nami asked only to get a shrug in response from Luffy and Zoro as they walked towards the bar. Into the great ocean. So the bar is this war, right? Naruto asked as she pointed at a general direction. No, it's this way, Shinobi-san, Boodle said as he pointed the girl in the right direction. Hi Gjii, the girl said as she walked towards the opposite direction that the man was pointing to. The mayor just shook his head and face-palmed as he heard the sound of another explosion. He bit down on his lips and while balling his hands into fists. The village he and the others built with their own blood, sweat, and tears, were being torn down by some idiotic pirate. I know this is reckless, but I can't handle this anymore, the mayor said as he pulled out the spear strapped on his back before running towards the bar. While the old man ran away, the blonde stopped walking and sighed. You can come out now, Sayu-chan, she said as a swirl of leaves appeared beside her. As the leaves fell on the ground, it revealed one Uchiha Sayuri. He will probably get killed. That was not nice, Naruto, she said as she looked at the retreating figure of the old man. I know, the girl said as she turned around and looked at the old man as well. It's just that I want him to actually show the fires within him, to actually show that he doesn't want to be oppressed and that he is willing to fight back. She smiled sadly, because if this happens and I'm not here, then this village is forever doomed. Naruto placed her hands on the pocket of her jacket. If at least one person fight until the end, even as his small flame flickers away, it can still give birth to a great flame. Sayuri closed her eyes. You know, because of your ditziness I sometimes forget that you've been trained by some of the wisest people in the elemental nations. You know, it's really a bad image for our country if the wisest people we have are drunken gamblers and perverts. The Namikaze smiled as she recalled her parental figures. So where have you been? I met this small up-and-coming pirate crew, even got invited to join them, Sayuri answered. So how are they? Well, one of them is a stern swordsman who wishes to be the best in the world. He kind of reminds me of Lee, Sayuri admitted as Naruto nodded, remembering the green-clad boy who wishes to prove to the world that hard work can overcome all odds. And their captain, well, only talked to him a few times, but he actually reminded me of you. Huh, well, at least when you were younger and dumber. What? Naruto shouted out as she pouted. Take that back, Naruto said as she threw a punch at Sayuro. Nope, Sayuri said as she cheerfully skipped away and twirled around the blonde's half-assed attempts to punch her. Naruto stopped for a moment and sighed as she picked up on the sounds of loud screaming followed by the familiar sound of one of those cannonballs exploding. I think it's time to go, Naruto admitted as she stopped attacking Sayuri. Don't worry about the old man, I'm sure that the pirates I told you about saved him. Then let's see what they can do, Naruto said as she vanished in a swirl of fire and ice. Showboat, Sayuri said as she disappeared in her own swirl of blue lightning. Into the great ocean. Fire at the old man, Buggy ordered as he looked down on the old man who challenged him in a fight. Captain Buggy, Kabaji interjected as he balanced himself on his unicycle. Don't waste ant cannonballs at him. Leave the small fry to me, he said as he pulled out a sword from his mouth. Can't help but to pick on weaklings during days like these, he pointed his sword at the mayor. I don't want my skills to rust, he added as the other members of Buggy's crew started to cheer for the man. Wait, Kabaji, why do you even wish to challenge me? Buggy asked from the rooftop as he kept staring down on the old man. Do you want fame? I don't care about fame. I'm here because I want to protect this village. To protect this treasure. Gyahaha, this village is your treasure. How stupid of you. The clown kept laughing. You know what, I'm going to let you live long enough to see me destroy this treasure of yours right before your very eyes. You monster. Get down here so I can kill you. Hey, go down there, Buggy said smugly as he pointed his right hand at the man. I don't want to, he said as he fired off his right hand, which disconnected from his body and floated through the air like a bullet, stopping only when it reached Boodle's neck. Gyahaha, this is what you get for disrespecting me, old man, he said as he started choking Boodle. I'm going to be the one to get all the world's treasure. Biggie smirked. I changed my mind, I'll just blow you up with this damn treasure of yours. Men fire at my Buggy screamed out in pain, eyes widening as he saw someone gripping his hand off the old man's neck. You, he said as his eyes narrowed at the straw hat wearing boy. You're that thief girl's boss, he said as he watched Nami and Zoro walk right beside the boy that dared to stop him from killing the mayor. Don't interfere, the village leader said in between his labored breathing. This is my war. They want to destroy this village. Don't worry, GJII, Luffy said as he looked at the old man. We have a bone to pick with that clown, so why don't you just sleep for a while? Luffy said as he grabbed the old man by the back of his head and smashed him to a nearby wall. What? Nami said in shock as everyone in the area just widened their eyes. You idiot, why the hell did you do that? Nami shouted out as she watched the old man fall on the ground unconscious. "'Cause he'd just get in the way," Luffy declared as he looked up at the red-nosed pirate. "That was actually smart," Zoro said as he nodded. "If you left him alone he would have just rushed in and would have gotten himself killed. You didn't have to knock him out." Luffy inhaled. "Hey you ugly red big-nosed wannabe of a pirate. I'm going to kick your ass," he shouted out as several tick marks appeared on the clown pirate's head. "Fire the buggy ball, kill the fool," he shouted back as one of his crew nodded and fired the cannon at boy. Nami ran to the side away from the ball. "Are you trying to get us killed?" "Oi Luffy, what are you doing?" Zoro asked as he watched the boy stand directly in front of the cannonball's path. "Do you think I won't move just because of a single cannonball?" The boy inhaled again. "Gomu Gomu no balloon," he said as his body expanded because of the air he inhaled. With his now huge air-filled body, Luffy bounced the cannonball off his stomach and sent it bouncing back towards Buggy and his crew. "What the hell?" the crew shouted in unison as the building got blown apart once more by the cannonball. This time it finally collapsed due to the extensive damages it sustained. Luffy smiled as he watched the explosion. "Well, that probably took care of some of them, now let's go kick their asses." Nami just stared at Luffy. "How did you that? That's not humanly possible." "Tisk," the three heard as the smoke cleared from the rubble revealing several burnt bodies being held up high and used as shields. "This is humiliating," Buggy said as he threw away the two members of his crew that he used to protect himself from the explosion. "I'm glad that I didn't get dust on my clothes," Kabaji said as he tossed two bodies away. "I'm guessing he ate a devil fruit, Captain." Luffy overheard the conversation. "Yep, I'm a rubber man. So that's why you can bounce my cannonballs back," Buggy said as he grabbed an unconscious member of his crew before throwing it at Luffy. The rubber boy saw the attack coming and just kicked the man away. "I'm Kabaji the Acrobat, commander of the Buggy Pirates, and I will get vengeance for the damages you've caused to my crew," the man said as he pedaled his unicycle towards Luffy while stabbing his sword forward. Shing, the sound of steel meeting steel was heard when Zoro drew his blade and blocked the initial stab. "If you're a swordsman, then let me be the one to deal with you," he said as he quickly drew his second swords and swung them both at the Acrobat. "Deal with the clown, Luffy," he added as Luffy nodded and went after Buggy while Nami just shook her head and went towards a nearby warehouse ready to pillage it for both its treasures and the map for the Grand Line that she was sure was stored there. "It's an honor to be the one to slay you, Roronoa Zoro," he said as he leaned back to evade the slashes before inhaling. "Acrobat technique. Fire trick," Kabaji said as he exhaled fire. "You Zoro said in surprise as the flames managed to hit him right at his face. Zoro quickly placed one hand to cover his face, leaving his body open for a roundhouse kick coming from Kabaji. "You," Zoro grunted before bringing up both his blades to block an overhead strike coming from the Acrobat. This time he saw the man sending another kick at his ribs and was able to react. He promptly released his hold on his blades, making the man lose balance and fall towards him. "What the," was all the man could say before Zoro punched him in the face, making him fall off his unicycle. "Damn, you're annoying." He scratched the back of his head. "You're not even a real swordsman. Fighting people like you will only dull my blade," he said as he unsheathed his third blade and placed it on his mouth. "Let me show you the difference between the two of us." "You impudent fool, I'll show you a real swordsman," Kabaji said angrily as he took out a bunch of tops while Zoro stood still holding all three of his blades. The Acrobat threw all the tops at Zoro, forcing the swordsman to parry all of it while he pedaled onto a nearby building, climbing the wall. He then pushed himself off the wall, sword pointed downwards towards Zoro. Direct stab. He, kill him, Kabaji," said Buggy as he shot of his hand to try and hold Zoro in place. Emphasis on try as Luffy stomped down on it before it could even touch the green-haired swordsman. "Don't interfere with Zoro's match," he said before kicking the hand back at Buggy. Zoro grinned as he jumped back, evading the attack that was meant to impale him. "Shit," Kabaji cursed as he saw Zoro running towards him. The green-haired slashed the Acrobat with all three blades, catching him on his abdomen as well as his chest. "Onigiri," Zoro said as Kabaji fell down on the ground unconscious. "This is how different we are," Zoro said as he sheathed all of his swords and took off his bandana. "Luffy, I'm going to help Nami," Take care of that clown, he said as he chased after the orange-haired thief. Yeah, I'll take care of this. Buggy gritted his teeth as he glared at the boy in front of him. Tisk thief, like you guys thinking you're big shots. Ah, we're not thieves, we're pirates. What? Luffy just stared at Buggy, and I'm going to be the Pirate King. If you're the Pirate King, then I'm bloody God. Luffy extended his right hand to his back while cracking his fingers. Just shut up and stop talking so we can fight. Buggy just frowned as he took out 8 knives, holding one in between each knuckle. For a moment there he saw an outline of a certain red-haired man taking the place of the boy in front of him. You know what, wearing the hat reminds me of Shanks. He frowned even more. I hate that man. Oh, you know about Shanks? Mind telling me more about his? Buggy lightly tapped his foot on the ground, making a small blade appear on it. Not telling. Then I'll make you tell me. You can try, Buggy shouted as he separated his body from his waist and made a spin around rapidly. Bara bara windmill. The clown screamed, declaring the beginning of the match between him and the straw hat wearing boy. Into the great ocean. Naruto smiled as she sat down lotus style on the rooftop of a nearby building. She had to admit the boy was definitely like her when she was around 6, a gun-ho little girl that wanted nothing more than to become Hokage. They're not bad, Naruto admitted as she watched the rubber boy repeatedly defy the rules of human biology and stretch his body. Then again, she's seen some weird stuff during her career as a kunoichi, so someone stretching their body to that extent didn't really surprise her. Sayuri nodded. HN, she said, quite content at what she's seeing. The swordsman and the rubber boy definitely had the potential to become stronger. Who knows, one day the two might even hold a decent match against her or Naruto. You know, I think the boy's offer for me to join his crew is still up for grabs, and with some convincing I'm sure they could make you join as well, she said as her normally onyx-colored eyes blazed red. No genjutsu, said Naruto as placed her elbows on her thighs while placing her hands on her cheeks. Well, I haven't even talked to them yet, but she watched as the boy's hat was stabbed by 3 of the clown's daggers, making him break out in a fit of rage. They seem like good people, she added as she watched the boy kick the clown in the gut. Definitely good people in her books, since she herself still wanted to punch the clown for blowing up their ship earlier. So what do you think? I think I might, she started chuckling as she watched the boyman handle the clown. Yeah, I might want to join their crew, but, you know, her eyes shifted from the fight as it met her friend's red ones. I want to try making my own crew one day. She smiled. Like one small family, a real family, she added. Sayuri smiled sadly in response as she thought, so you really still feel that your real family doesn't care for you, Naruto? Put my treasure down. The two heard the clown shout out as Zoro carried a large bag over his shoulder while Nami stood by his side. What happened next made Naruto lurch over as she placed her hands on her stomach. Oh, Kami. He kicked him in the nuts. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H. Sayuri just shook her head while smiling and continued watching as Nami tried to smack the pieces of body parts heading for her while Zoro also swung one sword with his free hand. Naruto stopped laughing and slowly stood up while dusting herself off. Hey Seu, this already over? I think it's time for us to go. Where to? We'll go to the docks. They'll probably head there after stealing the loot. And you're just going to allow them to take the money? Yep, if I'm right, that boy, she pointed at Luffy, won't take all the money but will probably leave behind a small amount to help for the village's repairs. Oh, and how can you be sure about that? Bawahahahaha. Why else? The answer came from your very mouth, Seu. That boy is kinda like me, she said before vanishing in a swirl of fire and ice. Troublesome, Sayuri said as she too vanished via elemental shunshin. Into the great ocean. Nami, Luffy, and Zoro ran towards the harbor with Zoro and Luffy each holding a sack containing gold bags. Is that your ship? Nami asked as she pointed on a nearby boat. Yep, Luffy answered as he walked towards the ship. Luffy, who are those people sitting on our boat? Zoro asked as he saw people sitting down on their tiny boat. One was a familiar-looking ravenet who sat calmly on the boat with her eyes closed, but the other was a pig-tailed blonde girl with blue eyes. Hey, do you own this boat? The blonde girl asked as she stood up and stared at Luffy with a large smile on her face. Yeah, the boy said proudly. It's small right now, but one day it'll be a huge ship. The girl kept smiling as she stood in place. Oh yeah? That's cool? Luffy smiled back as he stared at the blonde girl for a moment. Hey, what's your name? My name is Naruto and I'm sure you know Sayuri, she said pointing at the girl who was still sitting on the small boat. I'm Luffy. I think we were destined to meet, Naruto Shishishi, the boy said as he pumped his fists in the air dropping the bag full of treasure as he did so. I'm going to be the Pirate King one day and I want you to join my crew, the teen said before putting them down and extending one of them to the blonde. Destined huh? Naruto thought before smirking. Ha ha ha, a man with big dreams, the girl said smiling back at the ever-grinning teen. Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Namikaze D. Naruto and I'm planning to sail across the seas and see the entire world, she said as walked out of the boat and grabbed the boy's hand in a firm handshake. The boy shook back. Shishishi, let's turn the world upside down, let's set sail Naruto. Naruto looked at the boy for a moment before bursting out in laughter. Bawahahaha, you're an interesting person Luffy. Nice to meet you, the two said in unison as they both smiled ever so brightly. Along the calm waves of the East Blue Sea, within a harbor in a certain village. On this day, two individuals that will shape the future of this world met. The day will forever be known as the day of the destined meeting. Between one Monkey D. Luffy and one Namikaze D. Naruto. The seas will never be the same again. It has been a few days since the destined meeting between the two who bears the initial of D, and safe to say things has been rather chaotic as of late. Naruto and Luffy immediately hit it on and got along well, much to the ire of Sayuri and Nami, since they had to deal with the two's mishaps, which included Naruto and Luffy eating all of their food before jumping of the boat for some bizarre reason. Why they even did something so idiotic despite having no ability to swim still bugs the two to no ends. Finding solace in each other's sanity, Nami and Sayuri slowly warmed up to each other during their travels, with Sayuri often asking Nami about navigation, a subject that the orange-haired cat burglar was reluctant to talk about at first, although she did eventually begin discussing it with the Ravenet when she proved to be too persistent. During the past few days, the group also landed on a small island where they found a weird Afro man stuck inside a treasure chest. It was weird sight, but for the Kunoichis it still didn't top the god-forsaking sight of the sunset jutsu given out by two green-clad men hugging each other. The group then eventually learned of Gaimon the Afro man's life. It was really saddening to hear of his tale to obtain the treasure on top of the small hill, but it did make Naruto smile and think highly of Luffy for the kindness he showed towards the man, even going as far to invite him to join his crew for the sake of finding a new treasure to replace the one that he desperately tried to gain. On a side note, Sayuri and Nami were ecstatic when the strange man gave them some fruits, since a certain duo ate all their rations. Sometime during the stay in the small island there was also a small sparring match between Zoro and Sayuri, which ended up horribly wrong for the green-haired swordsman as the Ravenet outclassed him. Although mostly a one-side match, Sayuri couldn't help but be impressed with the man's determination, even going as far as praising the man's swordsmanship. The others thought that Zoro would be pissed off because of his loss, but the swordsman only took it for stride while asking for another round, right after their first match. Seeing a sword user stronger than him certainly renewed the man's resolve to get better, to become the world's greatest swordsman. Meaning more training, such as lifting weights, which he even did while he was sleeping, a feat Naruto was sure Lee would die for to learn. Eventually, after a day or two of sailing, the group's boats finally reached land. So where are we? Naruto asked as she quickly got off the small boat that she's been sharing with Luffy the entire time. Wow, I wonder what's on this island. Maybe there's a musician that I can get to join my crew here. Shishishi, said the rubber boy as he too left the small boat. Nami got off her ship with a small map in hand. The orange-haired girl gave one look at the map. We're in the Gecko Islands. There's even a village nearby, she said as she looked at the map. Seriously, if you're planning on going to the Grand Line, you should consider getting a bigger boat, the navigator told Luffy, who just nodded in response. A boat, huh? Naruto said as she folded her hands behind the back of her head. She then looked at Sayuri and Zoro, who just finished tying the ships up so they won't get swept away by the waves. Seu, Zolo, the blonde called out. Yeah, Naru. It's Zoro, not Zolo, the pirate hunter said as he yawned. So what do you need? Did you two notice? Sayuri nodded. Yeah, they don't seem hostile though, the girl said as she folded her hands over her chest. She then looked at Zoro. Roronoa-san, please do something about them. Zoro sighed. I guess I'll do it. The swordsman looked over a nearby cliff. Oi, what are you guys doing there? He shouted out as he pointed at the poorly hidden group consisting of 3 kids that for some reason looked like an onion, a carrot, and a pepper, along with a teen with a long nose, black curly hair that was covered by an olive green bandana along with a pair of goggles. He was also wearing brown overalls with a white sash. Sayuri had the urge to palm her face. Good job being subtle. Zoro rolled his eyes. Whatever, he replied as the kids suddenly ran away, leaving behind the long-nosed teen alone. The teen screamed at the kids and told them to come back before gulping and turning around to face the group. Taking a deep breath, the teen folded his arms over his chest and confidently said, "I am the great pirate fleet leader and the one who is in charge of this village's protection. Known as Captain Usopp. It's best you guys leave because if you don't my army of 80 million are going to destroy your group." Sayuri just stared at the teen, clearly unimpressed. "I don't believe you." Nami just looked at the long-nosed teen with a deadpanned expression. "You're lying, aren't you?" The teen, now known as Captain Usopp, started panicking. "Wow, they found out." "You even admitted to it," said Nami and Sayuri, while the former was already face-palming while thinking about the group's apparent ability to attract all the crazies. Speaking of crazies, bawahahaha, shishishi, came from Luffy and Naruto as they laughed at the teen's antics. "Hey, don't underestimate me. I'm a man with high self-esteem and everyone calls me the Honorable Usopp." Gurgle gurgle. Sayuri immediately blushed as she looked down to her stomach. As good as the fruit that Gomen gave them, it still wasn't as filling as meat. "Well, Mr. Honorable Usopp, can you perhaps point us to a place where we can eat?" He, someone can't control their hunger," said Zoro while snickering, only to receive a slight jab on the shoulder from the still blushing Uchiha. "Well, I'm hungry as well," Naruto said as she hugged Sayuri, "so no need to be shy, Naiseu. Eat as much as you can, okay?" The girl added, making the Uchiha even redder in embarrassment. The blue-eyed blonde then looked at Usopp, grinning as she did so. "Show us the way, Usotsuki-san." Into the great ocean. After a few minutes of walking, the group found themselves sitting in a table inside a simple establishment located inside the village called Meshi. This beer thing is awesome," said the ever-whimsical Kunoichi Naruto, as she chugged down another mug full of the frothy drink while chewing on the ever-mysterious anime meat on a stick. "Hey, you might want to take it easy there," said Zoro as he drank some of his sake, although he couldn't help but be impressed by the girl's tolerance for Kami's sake. It was her 15th mug already and she barely showed any signs of tipsiness. "Well, at least you look like you're happy," Zoro added as he looked at Sayuri, who was sitting across from him. There were a few empty plates in front of the girl as she gently wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Yes, it was a good meal," she admitted as she also drank from a small mug of beer. "Although I don't know how Naru can find a drink like this appeasing." "It's beer, just enjoy it as it is," he smirked, deciding to tease the other swordswoman for once. "Or is it not to your liking, Oju-sama?" he added jokingly, having no idea that, taking things into consideration, Sayuri was in fact a princess much like Naruto was. She grunted out as she drank some more of the beer while shifting her attention towards the big-nosed liar. "So you're looking for crew members?" Usopp asked as he looked at Luffy, who at the time was eating through a piece of meat. "Yup, and we're looking for a boat as well." Usopp lowered his head in thought for a second before responding. There's only one place to go in the village with a boat if you're looking for something like that. There's a mansion not far away from this village that belongs to a rich family. The owner of the mansion also owns the boat." Sayuri cupped her cheek using her free hand. "So are we going to steal the boat?" she asked before closing her eyes. "Or would it be better to kill the owner, steal their belongings, and then take the ship?" The girl started nodding. "Yes, that would be a good idea. I'll also make sure to burn the house to minimize possible evidence that may link the crime to us, perhaps even pin it to the servant." She then opened her eyes and realized everyone in the table other than Naruto was just staring at her with varying degrees of shock expressed on their faces. "What?" she asked as she tilted her head to the side. "Wasn't that what pirates do? If so, then why did they look surprised with her suggestion?" Naruto scratched the back of her head. "Don't mind her, I think she just had too much to drink," said the blonde Kunoichi, trying her best to relieve the situation. She really didn't want their newfound companions to find out that they were professional killers. The long-nosed teen just looked back at Luffy as he decided to repress the whole ploy to assassinate Kaya. "Well, I actually know the owner of the mansion. She's a weak, sick, and also bedridden." "Oh, you want me to look over her?" Naruto asked as he ordered another draft of beer. Huh, what do you mean? Well, she's sick, right? If you want I can look at what she has and if possible heal her. Nami raised a brow at the blonde's words. Wait, are you a doctor or something? Thank you, Naruto told the waiter as her newly filled mug was given to her. Yep, she answered to Nami before drinking more of the booze. Seeing that her friend had no intention of further explaining, the Uchiha decided to expand her friend's words. She was the student of the best medic of our land, Tsunade-sama. Sayuri smiled sadly. You could even say that she was raised by her. Cool. I knew I was right to make you join my crew, Luffy shouted as his eyes shined brightly. With this we just need a ship, then we could get a musician. Huh, where exactly are you two from? Far, far, and I can't emphasize on far into the East Blue, Sayuri answered. Luffy, who finally swallowed his food, decided to join the conversation. Cool, I knew I was right to make you join my crew, Luffy shouted as his eyes shined brightly. With this we just need a ship, then we could get a musician. Deciding to ignore the rubber boy, Nami just kept her eyes glued at Sayuri. Then if Naruto is a medic, then what does that make you, Sayuri? You could say I'm her bodyguard. Yep, she's my bodyguard. Zoro raised an eyebrow. You have one strong bodyguard, you know that? Shishishishi, who knows Naruto here might be a princess of some foreign country of assassins, and Sayuri there could be her best friend who she just dragged along when she left, said Luffy as he chewed through some more meat. Nami shook her head. No, that's definitely too stupid. I have to agree with Nami on that one, Luffy, added Zoro. Usopp nodded his head. Yeah, even for me that was a little bit too far-fetched. Naruto just kept drinking while Sayuri started chuckling dryly at Luffy's on-the-spot prediction of their circumstance. Finishing her kami knows how many mugs of beer, Naruto pointed a finger at the long-nosed teen. So Usotsuki-san, you want me to give her a checkup? It's Usopp, not Usotsuki, and I'd like that if possible. I mean, her parents are already dead, leaving her alone to look over the fortune. He leaned back at his chair. Pain and sorrow doesn't discriminate. Even if you're rich, you're not exempted for it, but if you can even lessen her pain, then I'd like you to take a look at her. Nami sighed. Let's forget about looking for a ship in this village. Let's go search somewhere else. Luffy took a bite out of a nearby piece of meat. Yeah, we're not in any real hurry. Hey, you said you were looking for members of your crew, right? Asked Usopp. Oh, do you want to join our crew? Luffy asked back. Let me be the captain and I'll join you, said Usopp as he pointed at himself. Never mind, everyone in the table said in unison. Usopp visible deflated before suddenly looking out the window. It's that time again. He turned back to the group. I'm sorry, but I have to go now, he said before rising from his seat and leaving Meshi. Zoro, who has been rather silent during the discussion, finished what was left of his sake. Wait, who's paying? Nami's eyes widened. I thought Usopp was going to pay, she said before looking at Luffy, who was still in the middle of eating another piece of meat. Am I going to be the one to pay for all of this? She asked before turning towards Naruto and Sayuri. To her surprise, though, the two were already gone, and in their place there was only a single note saying I owe you. Into the great ocean Naruto walked the streets of the small village with a smile on her face. The breeze was slightly cool and it was nice and sunny outside. Looking to her side, Naruto saw her longtime friend walking beside her. So what are you going to do, Seu? I'm planning on looking for a good place to train. Yeah, you better keep your skills up or Zolo-chan might catch up and beat you, teased the blue-eyed Uzumaki. Sayuri gave her friend a deadpan expression. His name is Zoro, not Zolo, she said, thinking that whoever it was that called the green-haired swordsman Zolo in the first place was definitely retarded. He has the potential, you know. Give him a few more months of training and fighting stronger opponents and he'll definitely surpass me in Kenjutsu. Naruto nodded. Yep, I was just teasing you. She looked up in the wide sky while walking. They really are an interesting bunch. Luffy's pretty strong too, and Nami, she's pretty good at navigating. The girl blinked a few times. Now that I think about it, you've been talking with her for a while now. Mind telling me why? So you noticed, huh? Well, aside from the fact that she's the only sane on in the group, I'm also asking her to teach me as much about navigation as possible. The Ravenette admitted as she crossed her arms around her chest. Why are you doing that? It's better to be ready for anything. The Uchiha closed her eyes. And because I know despite being technically part of Luffy's group you're still planning on creating your own crew. She smiled gently, I'm sure being pirate isn't your thing. You're probably aiming for something more akin to an adventurer than an actual pirate. I don't really care what I'm called, be it pirate, ninja, adventurer or whatever. I just want to travel and see what this world has to offer. Naruto smiled while quickly glomping her friend. But that's so thoughtful of you, Sayukai. She hugged her friend tighter. But let's hang out with Luffy for a while longer, he's pretty funny. The onyx-eyed Kunoichi resisted the urge to roll her eyes. I know, and he's just like you in the sense that someone needs to look after you. She sighed. That stunt you and Luffy pulled just proves that. Sayuri smiled slyly before asking, and really? You don't care what you're called, then how about if I start calling you Namikaze-sama? Blair. Anything but that one, Uchiha-sama, she snapped, replied as the two of them both started chuckling. Naruto kept smiling and chuckling while hugging her friend. And that's why I dragged you along with me, she said as she released her friend. So do you want me to train with you? The Uchiha shook her head. As tempting as that offer sounds, I really don't want to level an entire town or forest. Remember the last time we had a spar? Naruto's eyes widened as she pointed an accusing finger at Sayuri. You used Kirin on me. Sayuri rolled her eyes. It wasn't my fault that there were rain clouds around the area. Actually, that was your fault since you were using too many of those fire attacks of yours. I still can't believe you used Kirin on me, she complained while lightly stomping in the ground. The raven-haired Kunoichi continued to ignore her friend's complaints. Speaking of fire attack, she cupped her chin with her hand. Don't you think your abilities might have come from the same source as Luffy's powers, you know, those devil fruit things that the clown briefly talked about? She added, remembering the small monologue the clown gave during his fight with Luffy. You used Kirin, wait, devil fruit? Yeah, that weird guy the first beat up did mention something like that. Heck, even the Captain Gigi from our ships mentioned it. Hey Naru, did you ever eat any weird fruit? I mean, we both know that your techniques are definitely not Kaden, fire release, or even Hyoden, ice release, so there's a chance you could have eaten one of those fruits in the past. Now that you mention it, I did eat this weird fruit once. Oh, yeah, I remember it because it tasted like crap. She brought out her tongue. It's probably the worst thing I tasted my whole life. Might have been a devil fruit or something. Her eyes then widened. Ah, I remembered, I promised Usotsuki-san to take a look at his friend. I'll go look for him, she said as she started pacing away from the ravenet. Hey, we're not finished talking yet, Sayuri shouted out, only to find that her friend was already gone. She sighed and shook her head. I guess we'll talk about it later. She let out one final sigh. I guess I'll look for a place to train, she added as she walked towards the outskirts of the small village in the hopes of finding a place to train. Into the great ocean. So which adventure are you going to tell me today? Cheerfully asked the normally sick girl living in the mansion Kaya, as she peered out a window while smiling at her friend Usopp. Let's see. Usopp started as he sat against a small tree that was planted just a few feet away from the window. Today I'll tell you about the time when I met this crew of pirates a few hours ago. Pirates, the girl said in worry. Are you okay? She asked, panic clear in her voice. Yeah, I defeated them all by myself, he laughed out, but it turns out they weren't bad pirates, so we became friends afterwards. He lightly scratched the back of his head. We even went to Meshi to eat and celebrate. Kaya leaned out the window, her initial shock replaced by idle curiosity. What happened next? We ate, drank and talked. They even begged if I could join their crew. Are you leaving with them? I'm not sure, they need a ship first. He started before his eyes widened as he remembered the offer of a certain blonde girl. Oh yeah. One of them was apparently a doctor and offered to even look at your illness. A pirate, really? Yeah, I did offer it, said a new voice coming from above the tree Usopp was leaning on, surprising the two. Yohu! Naruto shouted as she jumped down the tree. Hello. The ever-cheerful girl greeted as she waved at the sick heiress. Hello. So you're Utatsuki's friend, huh? He never told me you were beautiful, Naruto said as she stood beside the sitting habitual liar. Thank you, said Kaya, a small blush marred on her face. It wasn't always that she was praised for her looks. Ah, this is the doctor I was talking about, Naruto. Usopp tried to introduce the self-proclaimed doctor but realized that he really didn't know her full name. Naruto smiled as she placed her hands behind her head. Namikaze D. Naruto Traveling Doctor Extraordinaire. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Kaya, Namikaze-sensei, the girl introduced before lightly bowing as a sign of respect towards the doctor. The kunoichi from Konoha nodded as she walked towards the open window. Kaya, now then, let's see if there's anything wrong with you so I can go on and bug Sayuri, she said as she placed her hand over the girl's forehead. Strangely enough, the lady of the house felt at ease in her presence despite knowing that she was most likely a pirate. Naruto closed her eyes while letting a small amount of her chakra slowly flow inside the girl. Diagnosing, she whispered as her chakra spread throughout the girl's body, branching from every major organ system, to the organs themselves, then the tissues, then the actual cells. The process has already been set. She had done this many times in her life. It was second nature to her, much like breathing or fighting. Full systems check, complete, no anomalies. Conclusion, ineffective coping skills, she said as keeping her eyes closed throughout the process. For a moment all were silent as the self-proclaimed doctor took her hand away from Kaya's head while Usopp just looked at both of them with an expression mixed with both anxiety and curiosity. He wasn't sure if Kaya saw it, but throughout the entire procedure there was a faint green glow in the blonde's hand. That's strange, you're actually fine. Naruto started opening her eyes as she cupped her chin. Well, aside from the obvious signs of exhaustion, you really shouldn't even be bedridden like Usopp told me earlier. What do you mean, Naruto? She's clearly sick. Naruto shook her head. There isn't anything physically wrong with her. It's more of a mental or cognitive one. You can say it's about her coping skills, she said, surprising Usopp. The cheerful blonde then looked at Kaya. You're stressing yourself out by worrying about too many things. It really increases your fatigue as well as decreases their immune system, making you possibly susceptible to more diseases. Luckily for you, thought even with a slightly weakened immune system you haven't been infected by anything at all. She gave the girl a pat in the head before gracefully turning away. Learn to relax a bit and don't stress yourself out too much. Try sleeping more or talking to someone about your troubles, that will usually help. Aw, thank you, Kaya said, lightly bowing to the girl. Truth be told, she was deeply impressed at what the girl, who was around the same age as her, diagnosed. It was spot on. There was no disease, she was just stressed because of the sudden pressure brought about by her parents' deaths as well as the current tension building up between her friend Usopp and loyal butler Kurohado. Nah, no need to thank me, she waved her hand dismissively. Thank Usotsuki-san here. The curly-haired teen's sweat dropped. It's Usopp Namikaze-sensei. Call me Naruto Usotsuki-san, she replied, making Usopp's sweat drop even more. Before Usopp could even comment once more on the kunoichi's blatant use of the word Usotsuki, he was interrupted by the familiar voice of one of the members of the Usopp pirates, meaning one of the kids who abandoned him earlier and left him at the mercy of a group of pirates. Captain, the voice said while Usopp suddenly found himself contemplating that at one point he really had to thank God that the group wasn't hostile or he'd be dead right now. Captain. The voice shouted once more as the two girls and Usopp looked towards the voice and saw three kids along with Luffy and Nami. Naruto smiled and cheerfully waved her left hand. Yo, Nami. Luffy. Hey Naruto. Shishishi, if you were telling us you were going here we would have some along. Wait, where is Zolo? Naruto asked as he looked at the group and noticed the absence of a certain green-haired swordsman. Nami sighed. Actually, we don't know, he disappeared after we left Meshi. She then glared at Usopp. Speaking of Meshi, you owe me money, she added, making Usopp's sweat drop. Aside from that, why are you all here? Asked Usopp. Well, we bought this guy here, one of the three kids said as he pointed at the ever-grinning Luffy. Who's that? The heiress asked. Luffy placed his hands on his waist. Oh, so you're the Ojo-sama who live in here? Usopp immediately went towards Luffy and placed his arm over the rubber boy's shoulder. This is the pirates I talked to you about earlier. Yeah, that, agreed Luffy. He's the one that wanted me to be the captain of his crew. No, that's not it. The boy shook his head, his vision never once leaving the apparently sick girl near the window. I have a request. A request for me? Yeah, we need a big ship, Luffy said as he extended his arms to his size as if to emphasize the size when he said the word big. However, before Kaya could even respond, a sharp and stern voice decided to interrupt their conversation. What are you doing here? Who's that? Luffy and Naruto asked as they stared the approaching black-haired bespectacled butler that was slowly walking towards them. To Luffy the man had an air of pure professionalism around him fitting for a butler. To Naruto however she immediately felt that something was off about the guy. The kunoichi from Konoha narrowed her eyes as she carefully observed the butler, making sure to take note of each and every movement he made. Clawhador, you can't just barge into the mansion like this, the man complained as he walked towards the open window placing himself in between Kaya and the small group that has assembled just a few feet away. Listen Clawhado. The butler simply waved his hand off-handed manner in front of the girl effectively cutting, you do not have to explain. I will ask about it later, the bespectacled butler said before clearing his throat, please get out. Is there something you need to say? Luffy smiled before shouting, I want a ship. No, the man answered almost instantaneously making the rubber boy deflate, prompting Nami to pat him in the back while the others sweat drop. The bespectacled butler then noticed a particular teen among the crowd, one who was specifically looking away from him. You're Usopp, he said SMR King before adding, I've heard some rumors about you. The villagers talk about you all the time. Ah yes thank you I'm sure everyone calls me Captain Usopp so you may see. The guards said you were lurking around the gates. Usopp-san what exactly do you want here? The butler said as he adjusted his glasses with the palm of his hand. I heard there's a huge mole inside the mansion. I see you can certainly lie so well, perhaps you inherited it from your father. A son of a filthy lying pirate, I'm not surprised that you turned out this way but you had better stay away from my Ojo-sama, the butler said as he adjusted his glasses once more. Usopp gritted his teeth as he glared at the butler while Luffy just looked at Usopp surprised to find out that his father was a pirate. Did you say filthy? Usopp asked as he continued glaring a hole at the butler. Naruto herself narrowed her eyes at the butler, she was certain that he was purposely provoking Usopp. That's enough. Apologize to Usopp at once. Kaya shouted out as loud as she possibly could, to try and defend her friend from the butler. The butler looked at his master, there is no need for me to apologize to this uncivilized person I am just telling the truth. He then turned back to Usopp, I feel sorry for you. You hate your father don't you? He's just someone who didn't love you. Clawhador smirked as he adjusted his glasses once more, face it you were not needed, he hated you that's why abandoned you. Left alone abandoned, the kept smirking as he saw Usopp visibly mad and enraged. Just a bit more, he thought as he internally laughed, oh did I hit a nerve? Why are you so angry? You're not very smart are you? Stupid, maybe you shish. Bam. Everyone's eyes widened as they watched a fist connect on the butler's face sending the man staggering back a few steps before his legs finally gave in, sending him falling face first down on the ground unconscious. You were talking too much, Naruto said as she looked down on the butler, one hand still in a closed fist while the other was holding on Usopp's wrist. Why did you do that? Usopp asked as he stared at the normally cheerful girl, only this time she wasn't cheerful at all. It was as if her entire persona changed from a kind and caring person to a cold and apathetic one. Even Luffy had to take a second look at Naruto as if to confirm if it was actually the girl she asked to join his crew. Kaya-san. Naruto started as she let go of Usopp's hand and looked at the shocked landowner. I apologize for my actions but I do not regret it. I will consider that act as payment for my earlier diagnosis, she added while turning towards the group. I'm sorry about that but I'm not in a good mood I'll see you guys later, she said as she disappeared in a swirl of leaves further surprising everyone. The earlier tension brought upon by the blonde kunoichi was then replaced by stunned silence. A silence that remained until it was broken by one Monkey D. Luffy whose eyes was shining like two twinkling stars clearly impressed at what he just saw. That was so cool, she just vanished, how did she do that? He shouted as Clawhador finally regained consciousness and slowly got back up while glaring at Usopp. It appears their conversation was far from over. Into the great ocean. Meanwhile after purposely separating from the group because he so didn't get lost, the green-haired pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro walked in the midst of a sea of trees. Arms crossed behind his back the swordsman walked around whistling as the gentle breeze kept blowing around him. It was calm and peaceful. Yes, he definitely intended to come here to enjoy the serene feeling. Yup, no way in hell that he got lost while wandering around. No way in hell. Shing! The swordsman's ears twitched as he heard the familiar sound of a sword being drawn. Is someone training nearby? He asked as he looked towards the direction of the sound. With quick and silent steps Zoro snuck around towards the sound. Whoosh! His ears picked up the sounds of a sword being swung in quick succession, making him increase his pace. Soon enough the swordsman found himself behind a tree overlooking a small clearing in the middle of the forest. Zoro's eyes widened in surprise when he saw who was training. In the middle of the clearing, wearing nothing but her dark blue pants along with the bindings that hid her chest, was the one and only Uchiha Sayuri, who was in the middle of one of her katas. Anyone else would have immediately gawked at the sight of a sweating and almost topless porcelain-skinned beauty. It was definitely a sight to lust for, but to Zoro he was not transfixed with the ravenette's beauty. No, his eyes were focused on her kata, from the posture of her body, to the movement of her hands and feet, along with the swift, powerful, yet elegant swinging of her chikudo. For a moment the swordsman could have sworn he saw the outline of the only other girl whose swordplay left him in awe. A girl named after a flightless bird who shared his dream, whose katana he still and will forever carry. His eyes remained focused on the swordswoman, watching her graceful movement as she went through one kata after another, each with increasing fierceness while maintaining her elegance. He just stood there watching, so entranced that he even failed to notice the passing of time. It wasn't until after Sayuri stopped from her kata did the Zoro return to reality. Sayuri took a deep breath and wiped some sweat off her brow before sheathing her chikudo. So how long are you just planning on standing there? She asked, surprising the green-haired swordsman. You knew I was here? He asked while walking away from the tree and towards the clearing. It wasn't until now that he finally noticed the natural beauty that came with Sayuri. Smooth porcelain white skin and sharp onyx eyes that stood out along with breathtaking figure that other girls would die for. Like any other man, the swordsman couldn't help but feel his own cheeks heat up. Sayuri smirked as she crossed her hands over her chest. It's really hard not to notice when someone is looking at you. Shaking his head, the swordsman let out a light chuckle. Sorry for bothering you. I was just walking around and ended up here by chance. I see. So where are the others? Luffy and Nami are back in the village with Usopp, while Naruto, well, I'm not really sure actually. No need to worry about her, she can take care of herself. You did tell us she was stronger than you, but she doesn't look like the type to fight. I can say the same thing about Luffy. Touché. Sayuri slightly tilted her head to the side while placing one finger under her lips. Are you busy, Roronoa-san? Zoro thought about his plans for today, which basically surmised to either sleeping or training. He could afford to miss out one of those to possible entertain the ravenet. Not really. Then do you wish to spar with me again just like before, Roronoa-san? Zoro grinned. If you're fine with it. So do you wish to use real swords or practice ones? If you choose the latter, just give me a few minutes. I did see some of them being sold in town. The pirate hunter's response was to draw one sword and place it in his mouth before taking out his other two blades and got into fighting position. This answer your question? He asked back, voice slightly muffled due to the sword in his mouth. Sayuri smiled as she drew her chikudo before taking her own stance while standing a few feet away from Zoro. Very well. Holding tightly on her blade, Sayuri let out a small smile before asking, ready, Roronoa-san? I was ready the day I was born, Sayuri-san, Zoro answered as he concentrated solely on the girl and slightly on his surroundings. The two just stood in their respective stances as a moment of silence filled the clearing. A few seconds passed as the two silently stood across from each other. Woo. The wind suddenly blew, shaking the trees in the area and making their leaves falls over the clearing. That was the signal the two needed. As the first of the leaves fell on the ground, both sword users kicked off their respective spots to charge at one another. Her chikudo met all three of his katanas, starting a beautiful symphony of steel clashing against steel, echoing ever so loudly within the clearing as the two began exchanging blows. This was but one of many duels between the raven-haired ninja and the green-haired pirate hunter. Into the great ocean, Naruto sighed as she walked the humble streets of the ever-so-peaceful Syrup village. What to do now? The Namikaze Kunoichi asked as she loitered around town. She just wanted to do something to get her mind off the butler's words, although directed at Usopp, the bespectacled man's condescending mockery got to her as well. It was just hit too close to her comfort and she felt that it was needed for her to shut him up. Tisk! She spat out as she began kicking as she walked. She didn't really have much to do since she already had a few Cage Bunshin's training in her place. She tried bothering Seu but backed off when saw the death match between the two sword users as lenient as Seu can be towards her. She just knew that she wouldn't get away unscathed if she disturbed the Uchiha. The kunoichi kept walking randomly, her hands in the pockets of her jacket while she whistled random tunes to pass the time. For a moment the girl stopped walking and raised an eyebrow as she watched someone approaching her. "What the heck is that?" Naruto asked as she watched a man in a black suit complete with matching hat walking backwards towards her. "Weirdo." The man, having heard the girl, stopped walking before stylishly turning around. "I am not weird, little girl." "No, you're definitely weird. Not as weird as some people I know in my life," she said, remembering a pair of green-clad men shouting about youth, but still weird. "I guarantee that I am not strange, nor weird. I am but a humble hypnotist called Django." Naruto tilted her head to the side. "A hypnotist?" "Yes." "What's a hypnotist?" "You can say I'm a form of entertainer." "Can you perform for me then?" asked the kunoichi. She really didn't know what a hypnotist was but figured it was an entertainer of some sort because of the man's appearance. Internally shrugging, the kunoichi thought that this might be just what she needed to get her mind off that stupid butler. "Well, normally I wouldn't do a free performance for people I just met, but for a girl as beautiful as you I might make an exception." The man placed his hand inside suit and pulled out a large ring with a string attached to it. Holding onto the string, the hypnotist began waving the ring slowly from left to right. "So what's supposed to happen?" "Just look at the ring while listening to the tone of my voice. Do you understand, young lady? Well then, when I say 1, 2, Django, you will be sleepy, you understand?" he said as the girl nodded. 1, the man crouched down, slowly waving the ring like a pendulum. 2, he added as he began moving the small ring faster. Django. A few moments later, the kunoichi and the hypnotist both slowly fell backwards to the ground. Their bodies made a light thudding noise as the two hit the rough and earthy floor. The two were still and unmoving, as if in a state of semi or permanent death. The only proof that they were in fact still in the world of the living was the small snit bubble that appeared in their noses. Yes, let it be known that both Django the hypnotist and Naruto the kunoichi fell asleep in the middle of the road leading to Syrup Village. Into the great ocean. With the passing of time, the sun eventually set and brought upon the cold night chill, along with the twinkling of the stars and the shining of the crescent moon. Through the dark night, one frantic figure ran away from the coasts of Syrup Village as she dragged along another figure with her. "Damn it, Luffy!" the girl shouted out as the moon shined down upon her, revealing her to be none other than Nami. "We should go back and help them," said another slightly panting voice as the moon revealed her to be the sickly girl Kaya. "We can't help them, we'd just get in the way. Our best chance now is to find Zoro, Sayuri, or Naruto. I'm pretty sure they can help out." Nami snapped back. The day started out nice, landing on land, getting something to eat, meeting the kind girl living in the mansion, along with the perfectly nice weather. It would have been best to describe it as a perfectly calm and peaceful day. But such a good day was ruined in a span of a few hours. In that short amount of time, everything went to hell. It all started when Naruto punched the butler in the face, leading their group to leave the mansion. From there on, events seemed to have escalated, leading to both Usopp and Luffy overhearing a conversation between a weirdly dressed man named Jago and Kurohito, who was revealed to be none other than an ex-pirate named Kuro, who was the former captain of the infamous Black Cat Pirates. The two also learned of their plan to kill off Kaya to get all off her riches, while their pirate crew, the Black Cat Pirates, were meant to invade the town and loot as much as they could. Being the man that he is, Luffy decided to put a stop to their plans by confronting them head-on with Nami and Usopp. In hindsight, it would have been a smarter move to look for the other members of their impromptu crew before going to the battle. If they did, then perhaps they wouldn't be stuck in this god-awful situation. During the confrontation at the beach, Luffy took out majority of their forces with fierce punches and kicks while he was under the effect of one of the hypnotist Django's suggestions, placing the rubber boy in a berserk state and literally had him mowing down their forces. The boy's onslaught actually lasted for a short while, until Django hypnotized Luffy to sleep while he was on the process of using the ripped-out stern of the pirate's ship as a bat, making it fall over him and pin him on the ground while he slept, taking him out of the battle. From then on, it just left Usopp and Nami against 8 barely injured pirates, Django, 2 guys known as the Nyaban brothers. Yeah, things weren't looking so good for them, but as if to laugh at their misery, God apparently decided that it was the right time for a pist of Kuro to arrive on the scene. Seeing that the odds were not in their favor, the two concluded that it was best to call for a strategic retreat, meaning they ran away as fast as possible while the pirates argued amongst themselves. While they ran away, the two found Kaya, who was breathing heavily along the way, and immediately dragged her away as they found a group of pirates chasing after them. Having seen that the pirates were catching up, Usopp decided to try and hold back the enemy so the two of them could escape. Indeed, his actions could be considered both heroic and stupid, but the teen, slingshot in hand, decided to fight back while the other two escaped into the nearby forests of Syrup Village. "What about Usopp?" Kaya asked in between her labored breathing. Nami gritted her teeth as she ran with all her might as she remembered her past experience with pirates, specifically the one that took away her adoptive mother's life. "I don't know, just pray that he would come out of this alive." "Get back here," shouted several pirates as they continued chasing after the girls. Kaya closed her eyes. By the looks of it, the fate of her friend Usopp was clear. "Like hell," Nami shouted back as she felt a sharp pain on her shoulder. The cat bugler cringed in pain as a ring-like blade made a gash over her shoulder. "Nami-san. Damn it, Kaya, you run ahead, I'll try to take care of this." "But how? You're injured. If I left you behind, they'll kill you, or even worse, they'll..." The sick girl tried to rebuttal, only for Nami to place a finger over Kaya's lips. "Please just run away, okay? We'll all catch up, I promise," Nami said with a gentle smile on her face as she reassured the girl. Kaya stared at the girl, tears already flowing down her eyes. "Please be safe, I'll call for help soon," said the girl before she started running once more, leaving Nami to her fate. Nami placed her hand in her wounded shoulder as she looked towards the group of pirates coming at her. It was only a small group of pirates, but she knew she stood no chance at all. Django, who was running ahead of the group, ran towards the direction Kaya went to, completely ignoring Nami. "I'm going after the girl. You guys do whatever you want to this one," he said as he, along with two other pirates, chased after the sick girl. "Hi." The 6 remaining pirates, including the 2 cat-like ones, said in unison as each of them grinned madly while looking perversely at the injured navigator. A chill went down Nami's spine, her eyes widening as she came into realization at what may occur. "Filthy pirates," she spat out angrily as she started running away, going the opposite direction from Kaya. "Captain Django said we could do whatever we want with her, hehehehe," the big, or rather fat man wearing a cat-like hat that covering one of his eyes said as he slowly ran after Nami. "Hee, yeah, butchie," another pirate, one thinner than the last, said as he licked his lips. "I always like it when they run," the man said, grinning manically as he began increasing the pace of his running while chasing after the injured girl. "Sham and Butchie are going to wreck that girl," a nearby member of the Black Cat Pirates whispered as his other companions nodded. It was well known within their group that the two brothers, especially Sham, had a rather violent streak towards girls they capture when they raid villages. "I just hope she's still up in one piece so we can have fun with her as well," another pirate threw her opinion as they kept on running. Of course, the entire conversation did not escape Nami's ears as she clearly heard what the men who were chasing after her were planning on doing to her, prompting her to run as fast as she could. She ignored the pain building up on her legs. She ignored her brain screaming at her to stop and take a few minutes to breathe in air. It was definitely fight or flight right now, and she was definitely going with the latter. To stop from running was to go through a fate worse than death. A fate feared by all women. Closing her eyes, Nami did her best to keep her pace, but exhaustion was slowly kicking in. She was slowing down. Why was she doing this again? Was it for the money or the ship? There was no real reason for her to get involved with this whole fiasco, so why did she even bother helping them out? Was she perhaps getting too attached to her companions? The sound of sudden rapid footsteps caught Nami's attention, effectively bringing her out of thoughts. Looking back, she saw one of the pirate grinning madly as he slowly caught up. Shit, Nami thought as her body went into overdrive. Sadly, despite her efforts, the man still caught up and raised his claw-like gloved hands and swiped it down towards Nami. With her body still high on adrenaline, Nami managed to avoid the full swipe of the attack by jumping towards her side. However, the man's follow-up attack slashed her in the back before he twisted around and landed a punch in her chest. The cat burglar tumbled down and rolled into the ground, moaning in pain. "And down she goes," Sham cheered out as he looked at the down Nami and kicked her away, sending her rolling towards a nearby tree. "Ah, Nami shouted in pain as her injured back crashed on the hard-wooded surface of the tree. "Good job, Sham," the other pirates shouted out as they broke in their own fits of laughter. Nami was breathing hard while she slowly stood up. Ignoring the pain from her most likely sprained ankle and bruised body, the navigator slowly limped away from the group. Butchie pointed at Nami. "Look brother, she's still going at it." He let her." The pirate looked ahead of Nami's direction and saw that she was nearing the main road leading to the village. "Let her reach the road, let her walk to it, give her the feeling that she could escape." He chuckled darkly. "Then before she could even go to the village and scream for help, we pull her back into the forest and have our way with her," he added, making the others laugh out louder. Yes, this was the reality and cruelty that most pirates in the world showed. "Help!" Nami cried out as she walked out of the forest and slowly limped towards the village. She was well aware that the pirates were still stalking after her. She could feel their eyes watching her and hear their loud thunderous laughter. By now the adrenaline was wearing off and she could feel the soreness in her entire body. "Hey Sham, should we start soon? I mean, we should have fun now before Captain Kuro gets any more mad," asked one of the pirates as he walked towards the limping Nami. He no reason to listen to him, he said it himself, he's no longer our captain, he's our client." The cat-like man said while licking his lips, "And as long as Captain Django takes out the girl, we'll be fine." "I can see the village from here," one of the nearby pirates said as they continued to walk slowly behind Nami. Sham smiled sadistically. "It's time. Butchie, get her and drag her back to the forest," he said as the bigger pirate nodded and ran towards the girl. Having little to no energy left, Nami couldn't fight back when the man's arms wrapped around her. "Help!" she cried out as tears fell from her eyes. "Seu! Naru! Zoro!" she kept crying out as the huge pirate dragged her to the forested area in the outskirts of the village. Despite being already injured, Nami was thrown violently down on the ground as she further screamed in pain and agony. However, the pain itself was insignificant to the dread she felt when she was pinned down in each limb by a pirate. "No!" she shouted while struggling ever so fiercely with newfound strength. Sadly though, her strength wasn't enough to overpower four fully grown men. The others just laughed and cheered while the one called Butchie methodically ripped off her clothes off one item at a time. Nami was already in tears by the time the man ripped her bra off, exposing her luscious F-cup to the world. He, holding quite a package, aren't we?" Butchie said as he eyed the 2 mounds of flesh in front of him while his hand trailed down to the last piece of clothing in the navigator's body. "Help! Anyone! Please help!" Nami cried out, feeling disgusted as she felt the pirate's touch along with the lecherous gazes from the others. She continued struggling as hard as possible, but yet again it proved fruitless. In fear of her imminent, the girl closed her eyes. She knew that calling out for this person for help was impossible, but with nothing left, the girl instinctively called out to the one person she cared about most in the world. "Help me, Belle Mere," she whispered silently. Butchie cackled out as he threw away the last piece of clothing remaining from Nami. "There we go." Nami bit down on her lips and drew blood, as helplessness began overwhelming her. It was already futile. The person she wants to be rescued by the most was already long dead, and the way things were going, she was soon going to follow. She was a realist. Having lived under the watchful eye of a certain tyrannical pirate, she knew full well how cruel this world could be. She knew without a doubt that after they had their share of fun, they would most likely kill her on the spot. She internally chuckled dryly, and she only had a few million belly left to go before she could buy off her town. "Sorry," the girl cried out as she closed her eyes. Butchie smiled as he loosened his pants while the other pirates released the girl, thinking the man's mass was enough to pin her down. Seeing as the big man was getting first dibs, the pirates just cheered on the sidelines. Butchie started prying Nami's legs open. "I hope you scream because I like it when they scree." "Anyone please help me," shouted Nami towards the heavens, and for once in her life the heavens decided to grant her wishes. There was a blur accompanied by a loud thudding noise of something heavy falling. It was a noise that caught the pirates' attentions and forced them to stop their cheerful and perverted jeering. Soon enough their once cheerful personas was replaced by one of disgust and dread as they began to smell an eerily familiar smell that they encounter after destroying a village or two. It was the smell of burning flesh. And it was in this unique and disgusting odor that forced Nami to slowly open her eyes and saw several things all happening in a span of a few seconds. The first thing she saw was a blurry figure that kicked away the large mass of flesh that was perched on top of her. The second was a flash of golden blonde hair that belonged to her rescuer. The third was the sight of the morning sun as it just rose from the horizon, basking the figure of her savior with its first warm rays. Nami closed her eyes again for a moment as the early morning sunlight nearly blinded her, but as she reopened them she already found herself in the arms of her rescuer. Tears once more began flowing out of Nami's eyes. These ones not of sadness and despair, no, these were tears of pure happiness. And Naruto. Into the great ocean. Earlier, along the empty main road leading to Syrup Village, Usopp lay on the ground, breathing heavily as cuts and bruises marred his whole body while he desperately crawled back towards the village. After trying to hold off the pirates for a while, he was eventually overwhelmed by them. He was brutally attacked numerous times. He was stabbed, slashed, punched, kicked, smacked, and broken, before the pirates got tired and left him for dead. To their credit, Usopp was actually almost dead. His body was full of multiple fractures and wounds that would have had anyone else already dead, but it seems the bravery and fortitude of a pirate runs deeply inside the young liar's blood. "Need to get help," said Usopp as he fought his own body to remain in the realm of consciousness as continued his strenuous crawl towards the village. "I can't give up," he cried out. "I know I can't win, I know they'll beat me when I fight them. But I'll still fight, I have to." He kept crawling as his wounds bled while the chilling wind blew over his wounds, making it sting even more. "I have to protect them," he whispered before going into a coughing fit. His head was woozy, to him the world was shaking around. He must have been hit a little too hard in the head by that hammer earlier. Usopp grumbled out as the pain became almost too unbearable. He didn't dare close his eyes for even a moment because he knew the moment he did, his consciousness would leave him. Shaking his head, Usopp continued his harsh pilgrimage towards the village, creating a trail of his own blood along the barren road. "Even if they don't believe me. Need to call for help, need to tell, pirates are here," he said in between his harsh and labored breaths. He didn't know how much time has passed or how far has it been since he began his still fruitless endeavor, but he just hoped that Nami and Kaya got away. The teen winced again as he felt a sharp and burning pain from his stomach, probably caused by getting sliced around the area. "It hurts so much," he whispered as he kept crawling on. If he was to survive this and look back in his life, he would always say that this was probably the most pathetic point in it, but right now that didn't matter. He needed to find someone to help them. And find help he did. Help in the form of a blonde-haired girl sitting against a tree near the main road. From the soft snoring sound he could hear, it was obvious that she was sleeping. He didn't really know if he was supposed to be mad since she was sleeping through their entire dilemma, or happy since the girl could probably help them out. Not that it really mattered, help was help, and right now they really needed help. Usopp steeled his resolve as he took a deep breath and dragged himself towards the sleeping girl. "Naruto-sensei," he yelled out with the top his lungs. ZZ. Seu. ZZ. ZZZ. 5 more minutes. ZZZ. Ugh. Usopp had the urge to palm his face, but rather that he reached for his back pocket and pulled out a slingshot. Looking around the area, he found a small pebble that he fired off on his slingshot, hitting the sleeping girl right in her forehead. "Grr, I said 5 more minutes, Seu-chan." The kunoichi grumbled out as she rubbed her forehead. "Naruto-sensei." The girl continued rubbing her forehead while she yawned and pushed herself off the ground. "Ugh, just Naruto Usotsuki," she said, finally opening her eyes, which landed on Usopp. Her eyes instantly widened while she ran towards the injured teen. "What happened?" she asked as she looked over the teen's wounds. There were massive bruising all over his body along with some deep cuts. He had multiple bones fractures, along with massive amounts of blood lost. "Kalendor, pirate, want to kill, Kaya, tried fighting, Luffy, asleep, we lost, Kaya, Nami running. Where's Zolo and Seu?" she said as she took out a small round pill from her jacket and forced it down the teen's mouth. "Chew it," she said as the teen nodded and did as she instructed. It was a blood pill, a simple product created by her mother figure Tsunade that increases the natural production of blood cells in the body. Although not as effective as an actual transplant, it still helps, especially in conditions like this one. Usopp coughed. Whatever that pill was tasted badly, not there. Haven't seen them since. Meshi, the injured teen, placed his hands weakly on the kunoichi's shoulders. Help them, please, he said as he closed his eyes and finally passed out because of his wounds and exhaustion. Please be all right, Naruto said as she immediately made a cage bunshin and had it tend to the teen's wounds while she sat down on the ground in a meditative lotus-like position. The kunoichi then closed her eyes. For a brief moment an orange-like pigment appeared underneath her eyes. It was a skill taught to her by Jiraiya, one that enables her to be one with nature. Although her mastery of it was far from being perfect, the skill still allowed her to sense every presence in the nearby area. The first ones she felt was a group of people chasing around one lone presence. It was a few hundred meters away, but she was sure that if she ran from here to there she'll be there in no time. Next she felt Kaya, since she knew of the girl's signature because of the earlier diagnosis. The girl was being chased by a smaller group. She considered going towards Kaya first, however she sensed two stronger presences nearby, Kaya slowly approaching her. Finally extending even further as far as to the coast, she finally honed into Luffy, who appeared to be sleeping along with another man who appeared to be stronger than most other presences barring a handful of individuals was standing near the coast. Deactivating her Senin Moto, the kunoichi from Konoha stood up from her meditative position. Kami, damn it Luffy, what did you get yourself dragged into? She said as she gritted her teeth because of Luffy's blatant recklessness, while also blaming herself for falling asleep and failing to help out during this obvious time of need. Channeling chakra to her legs, the kunoichi from Konoha kicked off the ground and ran towards the nearest presence that she felt. In a matter of seconds she cleared a couple of dozen meters as she hastily ran towards the forest. The kunoichi blurred through the forest, ignoring the actual path as she kicked off the trees and ran along them until she reached the place where she felt the signature of one of her new friends. Naruto froze from atop a tree she was perched on at the sight she saw. Nami was pinned on the ground by several men before a fat man who was in the middle of taking off his pants straddled over Nami, making the others release their hold on the navigator before joining. The other men cheered and laughed out while probably waiting their turns. Her blood ran cold while her pupils dilated. If there was one thing she would never condone, for it was, as a ninja she has seen what the act could do to a person. It could turn them into a shallow shell of their former self, and may even seeing lead to the victims to killing themselves. It was the harsh truth of the effects of such a distasteful act, and she would be damned if she was going to let someone commit such a crime in her presence. Pumping as much chakra as possible to her legs while activating her ability to make her legs hotter, the girl kicked off the tree, smashing it in burning cinders as she shot towards the would-be rapist. She spun her body while in midair and delivered a roundhouse kick to the man's face. Normally if someone was kicked in the face it would often result to a minor bruise or at worst a concussion, but when a kick comes at someone at an unimaginable speed while being enhanced by both chakra and a hellishly hot temperature that covered the said kick, the result were not pretty for the pirate called Butchie. The force of Naruto's kick ripped the man's head off while it was light on fire by the very same blow. She then landed on the ground and immediately spun her body before delivering follow-up kick to the now deceased's body, which sent it rocketing up in the early morning sky and out of the forest. She then grabbed Nami and quickly took a few step backs while holding the girl bridal style. That happened in a span of 5 seconds, and to the nearby pirates saw nothing but a blur, a golden blur that stood out in the dimly lit forest, a blur that killed one of their strongest members of their crew in seconds, a blur that will definitely seek vengeance upon them. Hey Nami. Naruto ignored the pirates for a while and directed her attention towards Nami. The ever-cheerful girl smiled as she patted the orange girl's head. Good job hanging on, Nami. You should rest now, I'll take care of the rest. Tears of happiness streamed from Nami's eyes as she listened to the girl's reassuring words. Unlike the ones she gave Kaya when the girl ran away, this one didn't have any hint of uncertainty or falsehood in it. For once since the passing of her mother figure, Nami finally decided to trust someone as she closed her eyes and left her fate in the hands of Naruto. Thanks. Ko. Please take care of the rest, she said before finally giving in to her body's inhibitions and losing her consciousness. I promise, Naruto said as the kunoichi from Konoha took off her orange jacket and placed it over the unconscious navigator's body before gently placing her in the ground. She then patted the girl in the head before turning towards the group of men that stood dumbly behind her. Any other day when a pirate spots a beautiful girl wearing nothing but a black sports bra and a skirt, they would have immediately drooled and tried to hit on or force themselves on the girl. However, this time all those present knew for a fact that it was not time for that. Instead, it was probably the time to contemplate the decisions they made in their lives. Naruto took a deep breath. To put into exact words what Naruto was feeling at that very moment as she saw Nami almost being D would almost be impossible to describe. Saying that she was simply mad was like saying that the Whitebeard was just a so-so man when it came to fighting, or that the whole world was just made of a small amount of water. The closet one can describe her rage is to say that she has surpassed the threshold of absolute anger and reached a state of utmost peace and tranquility, albeit a form of tranquil fury that was threatening to explode onto the foolish men that dared to evoke her rage. It wasn't really a good time to be in the receiving end of her cold glare. For the pirates, it felt as if the air in the area got thicker and it got harder and harder to breathe. The pirates also began breaking out in cold sweat as nausea overwhelming them as various images of their impending deaths came to them. It was terrifying. One of the nearby pirates could not handle the immense pressure anymore. The man shouted out loudly before pulling out his flintlock pistol from his pocket and aiming the barrel of the gun at his head. "Wait, don't!" one of the other pirates cried out, but it was too late. Bang! The pirate's body fell lifelessly on the ground as if like marionette whose strings were cut off. His brain matter was spurted on the forest floors as small circle marked his forehead. The other pirates stared with wide eyes at their companion's body while the kunoichi just looked at it with her cold blue eyes like it was trash. "He took the easy way out," she said, getting the other pirates' attention. "I will only give you guys one chance." She pointed at the man who killed himself. "All of you are allowed to kill yourselves right now, if not then." She purposely left the sentence hanging while using an even colder tone than before. She closed her eyes. "Choose you deaths wisely, because I assure you what I am planning on doing to you guys will not be so merciful." Sham screamed, panic evident in his voice as he pointed an offending finger at Naruto. "What are you guys waiting for? Attack her." Not one pirated from his side followed his order. No, after hearing the order, the 5 remaining pirates all turned around and ran for their lives. That signaled the beginning of the impending slaughter. Before they could even run away, Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed and reappeared in front of the retreating pirates. She then proceeded to immobilize all 5 of them by crushing their legs with super-powered kicks and punches. A loud crunching noise echoed along with the scream of pains coming from the pirates. If that wasn't enough, the girl appeared to have some kind of ability that slowly froze their limbs. They cried out, begged her for mercy as she slowly approached them. She stopped at the first man and placed her hand along his right hand. "You pinned down her right hand," the kunoichi from Konoha said, her tone completely cold and neutral, befitting of her status as a shinobi. "What are you?" the man shouted out as his whole right arm was frozen solid before it was smashed by pissed-off kunoichi. "You held her left hand," she said as she left the previous pirate to revel in the pain of losing his entire arm while she approached her next target. Panic was visible on the man's face. "No, I didn't, I swear I didn't," he tried to deny, only for the girl to burn of his entire left hand, melting his flesh until nothing was left but his bones that she proceeded to smash with her very hands. She then made her way to the 3rd and 4th pirates holding their left and right legs while she channeled her powers into it, burning one leg while freezing the other before, like the other 2, smashing them to pieces. Their screams of pain echoed loudly as Naruto walked to the last pirate that tried to escape. "I told you guys it would have been better to have just killed yourselves." By now the only remaining pirate that tried to run away along with Sham were visibly stunned as they witnessed the cruel fate that befell upon their comrades. "I didn't do anything to her, so let me go," said the last remaining pirate. "No, you did something," Naruto said as she pointed her middle and index finger towards the man's eyes. "You watched as she struggled helplessly," she said before freezing off one of the man's eyes balls while simultaneously burning the other. The screams within the forest got louder. "I don't really like doing this," she admitted, "since torture is more of my friend Sayuri's forte, but this situation calls for it," she said as she directed her attention to the only unscathed pirate. "Wait for a moment," she told Sham as she aimed an open palm at the group of injured pirates. "Shimobashira, ice needles," she said as she shot out needles upon needles of sharp ice from the palm of her hands, impaling the helpless pirates hundreds of times. The kunoichi purposely avoided hitting any of their vital organs, leaving them much alive to experience the agonizing pain before their very brains gave in due to sensory overload. She walked away from them, her ears already blocking out their pained screams while she walked towards Sham. Said pirate was shaking in fear. He knew he couldn't escape and there was no chance he was going to live through this. So he watched, shaking madly while urinating himself as his would-be executioner walked slowly towards him. Each step the girl took increased the sense of dread in the air. He was lucky he could still keep himself standing up. The girl stopped just a few meters away from him beside the dead body of the man who killed himself. Naruto picked up the flintlock pistol and tossed it at Sham. "This is called a gun, right?" she asked, having already learned of what those weapons were called from Nami. "One chance. Kill yourself right now before I kill you." It was the last act of mercy bestowed upon him, a chance to avoid a painful death, to free him from the curse that befell his comrades. However, being the sneaky and devious man that he is, he saw this as an opportunity to turn the tables over his opponent. Sham grinned as he opted to point the gun at the kunoichi before pulling the trigger. Bad move, probably one of the worst decisions he made in his life, just behind trying to the orange-haired navigator. Bang! The gun fired its bullet, sending it towards the kunoichi, who simply swayed her body to her side to evade the blow. Naruto shook her head. "Wrong choice," she said as she vanished in a blur of speed, only reappearing beside the pirate, her hands already gripping both of his wrists as she slowly burned the top layer of his skin. "Asoi Hano, slow flame," she said as small patches of fire slowly appeared all over the man's body, spreading ever so slowly as it burned him. Like all the others, Sham cried out in pain. The man ran around in circles as more and more flames appeared all over his body, while Naruto just watched as her flames burned off the pirate's skin. First as denial, she whispered out. "This can't be happening. No, not me," Sham cried out. Next as anger. The man screamed from the top of his lungs as the pain almost became unbearable. "Why me? This is not fair. Why does it have to be me?" Then bargaining. "No, please stop. I'm sorry, please just stop." After that depression, "Why am I still alive?" he cried out as tears flowed out of the man's eyes before they were consumed by the flames. Finally acceptance. "I'm going to die," he said as the fire that was consuming him got hotter than hotter before suddenly, as if an act of mercy by God, the flames ceased to exist. Wah! Before he could even celebrate, he felt a cold chill around his newly burned skin. It was then he realized that the blonde's hand was resting right as his chest. "Kori no Nimari, ice sleep," she said as the man with burn marks all over his body was slowly covered by a thick layer of ice. It was a very painful and agonizing feeling as the coldness of the ice met what was just a few moments a good burning pyre of flesh. The contrast to the two extreme temperatures that met his now exposed skin was enough to make him almost lose consciousness. Using all his remaining strength, Sham stared at his soon-to-be killer as he muttered out what would be his last words. "What are you?" Naruto smiled. It was not kind nor mad but neutral, completely cold and emotionless smile. "Well, of course I'm human, much like you. I am healer, a fighter, and I could be both. But what I am, deep down inside, is but one of many who walks along the shadows, one who walks a blood-stained path. I am no hero, I am no villain, I am but a shinobi," she said as she created a small blade of ice from the air and used it to slice through the man's jugular vein, letting him bleed out as his body was slowly encased in ice. She looked at Sham right in the eye, her cold blue eyes meeting his own as the ice encased his body up to his neck while slowly making its way around his face. "And right now I am death," she whispered as she turned away from the man who was now fully encased in ice. Into the great ocean. Meanwhile, in the shores of the island, one Kuro or Kurohadol stood, tapped his foot on the ground impatiently while holding a black suitcase. He was still waiting for his former crew to come back with the girl's body. Since he was even feeling a bit generous that day, he gave them half an hour to enact his plan and kill off Kaya so he could inherit the family's riches. It's been 25 minutes since then and there was still no dead rich girl at her feet. Clearly he was not impressed by their performance, not at all. Shaking his head, Kuro looked up in the sky and noted that the sun was slowly rising. "Stupid buffoons, even incapable of following the simplest of instructions. I do not my plan to fail because of some half-assed effort on their part," he said as he opened the briefcase, revealing its contents to be a pair of black cat-like gloves with katana blades at the end of each finger. If you want something done right, you have to do it for yourself, he said as he wore the gloves. I better kill them off soon, Kuro added as he looked at the sky with a smile on his face. Oh, how he missed killing. He was going to be sure to grab his fill for that day. However, before he could leave the shore, the butler noticed something falling from the sky. What is that? He asked while following the falling object, the path of the object. His eyes then widened when he came to a realization of what was falling from the sky. It was a body, a huge headless body of one of his old associates. Butchie, he asked as he watched the body descend into the ground, colliding with the ripped-off stern of the pirate ship. That is certainly not part of my plans, but it has little to no consequence, the man said as he dismissed what he saw. He turned towards the small slope and started walking towards it. Yaown, where's everybody? A loud voice said, coming from behind him. Kuro looked back and saw the straw hat wearing boy that was pinned down by the stern of their ship earlier getting up and dusting himself off. Despite what could have killed most men, the boy was relatively unscathed. I thought you were dead. Luffy looked at Kuro while tilting his head to the side. I can't die yet until I become the Pirate King Shishishi. Now where's everybody? If everything is according to my plan, then they are most likely dead. Shishishi, they can't be dead. I trust them to be strong enough to survive. If you must keep lying to yourself, then do it at your own time, the man said as he adjusted his glasses with the palm of his gloved hand. I have a schedule to keep. Are you still going to attack this village? Yes. Shishishi, then you're not going anywhere. Why are you so insistent on protecting this village? Because Usopp wants to protect it. It's that it. Yep. Now leave or I'll beat you to a pulp. Oh, and how are you going to make me? Kuro asked. A sadistic smile slowly made its way to his face. He did need a warm-up before the main hunt. Luffy grinned as he placed his left hand over his right forearm. Gomu Gomu no pistol, shouted Luffy as his arm extended and shot out like a pistol, hitting Kuro in the cheek. The butler staggered back, a small bruise visible on his cheek. A fruit user, huh? Well then, let's play, he said as he vanished in a burst of speed. Luffy ducked down to avoid an overhead swipe aimed to decapitate him. Placing his hands on the ground, Luffy kicked behind, hitting the butler once more. The rubber boy then rolled in the ground before turning towards the butler with his ever-present grin. Luffy declared the most likely outcome to this match. Shishishi, I'll kick your ass. Into the great ocean. Elsewhere, Kaya kept running for her life, in hopes to escape of her would-be executors. By now she had a bunch of scratches all over her body from going through a few thorny bushes, as well as tripping a few times and stumbling on the ground. Whoosh! The girl's eyes widened as she now heard the familiar sound of something cutting through the air. Ducking down, the sick girl managed to dodge two bladed rings that sliced down a few nearby trees before flying back to its owner. Now Ojo-san, would you please just allow me the pleasure to have you sign this will to pass on all your riches to Captain Kuro so we kill you so we can all be on our way? Asked Django while his two other pirate companion walked towards the girl. Breathing heavily, Kaya tried to stand up only for her legs to give in due to exhaustion. It was this time that she cursed her weakness. If only she hasn't spent the last few years stuck in her bed, then she was sure she would have outran them by now. I guess this is it. Django twirled both of his chakram-like weapons in his fingers while his two companions drew their respective weapons, a sword and mallet. I dislike hurting women, so you two can convince her to comply, said Django as he signaled his men to raise their weapons. Shing, shing, whoosh, clang. Django's eyes widened behind his heart-shaped glasses as his two flunkies were cut down before they could follow his orders. What the hell? The hypnotist asked in actual confusion as the strange sight that just occurred. Standing over the two fallen pirates he dragged along was a beautiful ravenet holding a sword and a slightly beaten-up green-haired man wielding three. The strange thing about the sight was the fact that the two of them were clashing their swords against each other in a deadlock against each other. The ravenet kicked the green-haired swordsman in his midsection, pushing him away, and back-flipped through the air a few times before placing her left hand in front of her while holding her blade in her right hand in a reverse grip before kicking off the ground and charging back at the swordsman. The bandana-wearing swordsman crossed his two swords around his chest while placing the sword in his mouth horizontally behind them. He then kicked off the ground and ran towards the girl. Onigiri. Demon slash, he shouted out as he slashed down both of his blades downwards diagonally while using the sword in between his teeth to slash horizontally. Setsuna instant, Sayuri whispered as she sent 4 quick chakra-enhanced slashes towards Zoro. Their powerful blows met, creating a gust of wind that blew away Django's hat as the sound of steel meeting steel finally ceased. In a flash the two combatants appeared on opposite side of the forest, both standing still. Sayuri appeared, who was standing opposite Zoro, held her Chikudo right side up before sheathing it back into its scabbard. So round 71 goes to me again, Roronoa-san. The three-sword user staggered back for a moment and dropped on one knee before letting go of the blade stuck in his mouth as he began breathing heavily as a light gash appeared across his chest. Damn it, he said in between his heavy breaths. Sayuri smiled as she looked at the swordsman. Don't feel down, you are steadily improving. She added as she wiped some sweat from her brow, but you did notice that we killed 2 people in the middle of our spar. Doesn't matter, it looked like they were going to attack that girl in the first place. For the most part Kaya just stared in awe, forgetting for a moment about the imminent danger in her life as she watched the 2 strangers fight against each other while Django was just as dumbfounded as her. Either way, it was a good spar. That was a spar, Django and Kaya simultaneously thought. They could have sword they just saw a death match against the 2-sword user, but apparently it was nothing but a sparring match. So, Sayuri glanced at the strangely dressed man with the heart-shaped sunglasses and dark blue coat. Would you please tell us why you were trying to kill this young lady here? Would you like to see a trick? The hypnotist asked, knowing full well that he was clearly outmatched by the 2 individuals if they decided to step in and protect the girl. Sayuri tilted her head to the side. A trick? She asked as Django quickly tied a string in one of his chakram. In 1, 2, Django, you will fall asleep, okay? The man said as he quickly swayed his ring on a string. 1, the man swayed the ring back and forth while Sayuri and Zoro stared at it. 2, he smirked, victory was at hand. Django, he shouted out as Zoro fell on the ground asleep. While Sayuri just looked at Django, one eyebrow raised while her arms were crossed around her chest. What was that supposed to do? Sayuri asked as she just stared at Django with a rather bored and deadpanned expression. How? Are you not affected? Oh, you were trying to do something. Yes, you should be hypnotized by my spell right now. Hypnotized? What does that mean? I am not familiar with that word. Kaya, who was still dumbfounded, answered. He meant that you would be under his control. Ah, the girl bopped her hand on an open palm. So it's a form of genjutsu, huh? She started chuckling. Well, it's foolish to try and use a genjutsu on an Uchiha. You know, let me grace you on how to control people, she said as she looked at Django right in his eyes. Genjutsu. Sharingan illusion technique. Copy wheel eye. The hypnotist clutched his head before screaming out in pain. The man cried out before falling down to the ground unconscious. The last thing Django saw before he passed out were a pair glowing red eye with 3 visible tomos belonging to a smirking ravenet. Sayuri sighed as she deactivated her family's dujutsu. I wonder what that whole thing was about, she mumbled as she helped Kaya up. For some reason she had the feeling that she and Zoro were missing something. Into the great ocean. My plan will never fail, shouted Kuro as the rubber boy held tightly on his torso. Gomu Gomu. Luffy started as he extended his head back to an inhuman length. Bell. He shouted as he snapped his head back and brutally head-butted Kuro, knocking the man face first down on the ground, bleeding and unconscious. By now the rest of the Black Cat pirates who recovered from Luffy's initial onslaught stared in shock as the boy defeated their former captain with ease. He defeated Kuro, one pirate said. Shock. Unbelievable, said another. A few others started panicking. We're doomed. While another asked, who are you? Luffy looked at the dumbfounded pirates, his body marred with slashes from the man's gloves. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, and I will never lose to a pirate that leaves the sea behind. A pirate only leaves his name when he dies, so remember my name for the rest of your life. Luffy grinned. I am the one who will become the Pirate King, he said as he grabbed Kuro's body and threw it back to his crew. The teen inhaled. Now leave and never come back, he shouted from the top of his lungs, making the pirates run away in fear of their lives. Luffy watched as they got on their ship and sailed away before letting his body give in to the damages he sustained throughout his fight with Kuro. However, before the teen could fall to the ground, his body was caught by a certain blonde-haired kunoichi. "You okay, Luffy?" she asked as she gently assisted the boy down to the ground. "Yeah, thank Naruto Shishishi. Okay, if you're fine then." Smack. Naruto slapped the unsuspecting Luffy in the face. "Ouch, what was that for? Why didn't you look for me, Zoro, or Seiyu?" "Because I was sure I could handle things on my own. You were too reckless. But we took care of them in the end, didn't we?" "Oh yeah, then do you know what happened to Usopp, Luffy, and Kaya?" "They're okay, right?" Naruto shook her head. "Usopp is severely injured when he found me." She looked away from the rubber boys with a grim expression on her face. "And when I found Nami, she was almost dead." Luffy's eyes widened in shock, horror replacing his usually care-spirited demeanor. "What? Where are they?" he asked as he looked around only to find no one in the area but him and Naruto. The two were already resting in the village. She sighed. "I already tended to their wounds. As for Kaya, I'm sure Zoro and Sayuri are with her right now, so she's safe as well." "Shishishi, then I'm glad everyone is all right." The Konoha shook her head as she once more slapped Luffy in the face, this time more forceful. "What you did today was reckless, Luffy. You could have gotten everyone killed. How are you going to be the Pirate King if you let your crew die before you even pass the Grand Line?" Luffy, I won't berate you. I won't tell you to change how you are, but I want you to remember that your recklessness will get not only yourself but others killed as well," Naruto said with a hint of bitterness in her voice which Luffy picked up almost immediately. "You need to remember that your life is not your own anymore, Luffy. It belongs to your crew, no, to your nakama as well. Your death will lead to theirs and theirs will lead to yours. Don't make the mistake that many have done in the past." "I understand," said Luffy as he looked up in the sky before collapsing flat into the ground once more. The boy kept staring in the sky deep in thought. Naruto was right. He did screw up big time, but he won't let it happen again. Next time he was going to make sure that no matter what happened, even if it came to his own demise, that at least his nakama would end up safe in the end. "Thank you, Naruto." Naruto smiled as she leaned down towards the Luffy. She placed her hands over his wounds as a light green glow enveloped them. "Just never forget what I told you, Luffy." He never did. Into the great ocean. A few days has passed since the incident against the Black Cat pirates, and it would be a gross exaggeration to say that everything was the same as it was before. Luffy, despite his still optimistic and cheerful self, actually spent a good amount of time alone doing either training himself or uncharacteristically thinking deeply. If he wasn't doing that, he was eating a large amount of food, racking up his debt at Meshi. When they learned of what happened, Zoro and Seiyu felt absolutely for not being there to help out. Zoro steeled himself to never let this happen again by training even more extensively. It was ironic, since training was the reason that they were not able to help in the first place, but rather that pointed out the others figured that it was the swordsman's own way for coping from his failures. Sayuri, on the other hand, took it a lot harder than Zoro. After learning from Naruto what almost happened to Nami, the Ravenet began blaming herself. Naruto literally had to beat that idea off of her friend's head lest she go all emotional on her. That leveled a forest or two, but it did snap the Uchiha out of her funk. Nami tried to act cheerful as if nothing happened, but it was clear that she was inching away from male members of their group. It would take a long while until she returned to normal, but in the meantime the girl found solace in the companionship brought about by Naruto and Sayuri, who were trying their best to help navigate her. Usopp's injuries were healed up thanks to Naruto's healing abilities that for some strange reason no one still asked about. After healing, the liar thanked everyone before disappearing. No one has seen him since that day. Kaya was grateful for the efforts done by the small group and promised them a reward. What the reward was she didn't necessarily tell anyone, saying it was a surprise. After the ordeal, the sick girl spent a good amount of time with Naruto, asking her about the field of medicine, to which the blonde kindly answered as many questions as she possibly could while teasing the girl about her relationship with Usopp, making Kaya blush quite a few times. Eventually the time came when the girl told them come at the nearby shores of the village. This is what led to this very moment, 5 days after their initial landing in the island. The sun was at its zenith while the breeze blew gently, while a group of 5 along with Kaya and a lamb-looking butler stood on the makeshift docks. Luffy's eyes were shining while he smiled ever so happily, while the others, even Naruto and Sayuri, were in shock, gawking at the present that the girl felt she owed them. Luffy exaggeratedly dropped his jaw. Wow. It's a caravel, said Nami. Is that lamb? Asked Naruto as her eyes focused on the bow of the ship. I think it is, answered Sayuri as she too looked closely at the ship. Zoro smiled. Looks good. The lamb man butler cleared his throat, successfully grabbing everyone's attention. This ship was designed by me. It might look a bit old, but it's in perfect condition, he said proudly before adding, this ship's name is Going Merry. It's a caravel ship with a rudder in the middle. Luffy pumped both of his fists in the air. You'll give this ship to us? Kaya nodded. Yes, as a token of our appreciation, please take it. Now I'll explain to you how to steer it about the Kruger neck. You'll need to regulate it by the yards, the goat man told Luffy as said pirate just tilted his head to the side, obviously confused. Sayuri and Nami sighed as they walked towards the goat man. Nami said as she sweat dropped, he doesn't understand that. Sayuri nodded beside Nami. Yes, I think it will be better if you explain it to us. I see. Well then. The man began explaining to the two girls the complex processes involved in piloting the ship while the others continued to just marvel at their new ship. It's a very good ship, said Luffy as he placed his hands on his waist. Naruto took a few steps towards the boat, her hands gently touching its hard wooden frame. Yeah, I have a feeling this ship will take us for a long ride. Ah! Someone shouted out, grabbing everyone's attention. Looking towards the source of the voice, the group saw a huge ball rolling down the steep slope towards them. Somebody stop me! Naruto narrowed her eyes as she carefully observed the ball. It's Usotsuki-san and he's carrying one huge bag. What is he doing? Asked Luffy as he watched the rolling teen. Just stop him before he hits our ship, said Zoro as he, Luffy, and Naruto simultaneously raised one leg up towards the rolling ball, lightly kicking it to stop its forward momentum. Thanks, said Usopp while Luffy's foot was planted firmly on his face. You're welcome, Luffy and Naruto greeted back. So Usotsuki, how are you? We haven't seen you in days. I've actually been doing a lot of thinking and I've decided to finally become a pirate. Usopp-san, you're leaving? Asked Kaya. Yes. I was hesitant at first, but now I decided. Please don't try and stop me. I won't stop you, the girl said as she shook her head left and right, but everyone will miss you. It won't be the same without you. Don't worry, when I return I'll tell you about all my great adventures. I'll wait for you. Oh, how romantic, cheered Naruto, who was already inside the ship. Bonk. Ouch. The kunoichi cried out as she held onto her head. You didn't have to hit me. Sayuri just shook her head. You didn't have to ruin their moment. Usopp looked at the pirate crew, specifically towards Luffy, who was standing a few feet away from Naruto and Seiyu. Thank you guys for everything. I wish you guys the best of luck. Maybe we will meet one day again. Why? Why? Because we're both pirates, we're bound to meet again in the sea. Zoro crossed his arms over his chest, copying a certain Uchiha as he leaned against the side of the ship. Just shut up and get on the ship. Why? Because we're Nakama now, answered Luffy. Then am I the captain now? Asked Usopp. No, I'm the captain, Luffy childishly shouted back. Naruto smiled happily as she watched Luffy and Usopp's antics while the former got in the ship. From the side of her vision she could also spot Seiyu walking towards Nami, who was working on the wheel of the ship. This was a small moment of peace allotted to them by the gods. They all needed this, some more than others. So the shinobi from Konoha closed her eyes as she enjoyed the moment. For now it was time to just put their troubles aside and just enjoy the fact that they all lived another day while gaining a new member friend. Smiling ever so brightly, Naruto walked towards Sayuri and Nami. Let's set sail, she shouted out, making sure everybody heard it. Aye, Captain. Sayuri, Nami, and surprisingly even Zoro jokingly replied, making Luffy's eyes widened. What? But I'm the captain, the rubber boy cried out as he ran towards the blonde kunoichi. He hasn't even left the East Blue and his crew was already performing a mutiny. Naruto chuckled as she patted Luffy in the back. Then let's go, Captain, she said, smiling ever so brightly, unaware of the trouble brewing over the horizon. Into the great ocean. As a certain ship sailed through the seas on its maiden voyage, the sounds of heavy construction filled the area as the citizens of Orange Town began rebuilding the damage brought about by Buggy the Clown's crew, as well as the additional damage done by the few individuals that dared to fight against the mad pirate. In the midst of the construction, the Mayor Boodle sat on a small wooden chair while he overlooked the various schematics, blueprints, and plans regarding the reconstruction of the town. "Troublesome Gakis," the man said as he rubbed his temples. After regaining consciousness, a certain blue-eyed Kunoichi told him of the events that transpired while he was in La La Land. Maybe he was still a bit woozy because of that Straw Hat Boy, but he could have sworn the girl vanished in a puff of smoke after talking to him. Shaking his head, the man returned to work and started jotting down more notes while he balanced a few budgets. "But she really was a strange girl. What did she call herself again?" the old man said as he scratched the back of his head. "Shinobi," he muttered out, unintentionally attracting a certain group fresh of the boat that was passing by. Excuse me. Yes, can I help you?" Boodle asked as he looked towards the direction of the voice. Standing a few feet away from him was a man with gravity-defying white hair who was wearing a black face mask as well as strange headband with the insignia of a leaf that hid his left eye. "Can you tell me more about the shinobi you were talking about?" the man asked, smiling with his visible eye. Boodle's eyes narrowed at the man. "Oh, why are you interested in learning about the shinobi?" "Well, you see, me and my companions are looking for a specific one." The white-haired man put a hand on his pocket and pulled out a photo of a pig-tailed blonde girl smiling brightly. "You see, her father is on his deathbed and wishes to see her one last time before he passes." "Oh, I see." The old man nodded as he began telling what he knew to the white-haired man. "Well, she was here a few days back actually, but she left with a small group." "Do you know where they went?" "Sorry, but I have no idea," the old man confessed. "I'm sorry if I could not help out that much." "Mama, you've been really helpful." The white-haired man bowed his head. "Thank you very much," he added before turning around and walking away from the old man who already returned into doing his work. The white-haired man placed his hands in his pocket as he walked through the town. "This place really looks like a storm hit it." He shook his head. "It's like when Orochimaru tried to invade Konoha," he then sighed. "It looks like this place is just as chaotic as back home," the man added while pulling out a certain orange-covered book. "Hey perverted, did you find any leads?" "There goes reading his book." "Well, actually yes, I found out that she was just here a few days ago." "How about you, did you learn anything?" he asked as he looked at his companion, a feisty red-haired woman that was twirling a small flute in her hands. She threw a small piece of paper at the face-mask-wearing ninja. "Well, got a map of this East Blue place and I have to say it's filled with water." The white-haired man nodded. "How about the other two? Where are they?" "Well, the hyperactive shouted something about doing some form of ridiculous exercise before running off, and the other one, well, she went around to take a look at the unique weaponry this land has to offer." The woman strapped the flute back to her waist. "Why am I here anyways? Shouldn't that Hyuga be here in my place?" Quote, "Well, he has another mission and I really couldn't take the other members of Team 7 along since, well, they too were in another mission. To be honest, you and the other two were the only reliable people available when Sensei gave me this mission," he admitted while scratching the back of his head. "Weren't Anko and Aoba available? I saw them in the Jonin's lounge loitering around when we left." "As I said, you were the only reliable people around at that time." The foul-mouthed Kunoichi rolled her eyes. "Sure, whatever you say, perverted." The Kunoichi sighed. "It looks like they're here. Yosh. I just finished running 1,000 laps around this village, now time for 1,000 squats, the newcomer said as he began doing squats. The other two sweat dropped and directed their attention to the other newcomer, a Kunoichi who was holding what they assumed was some sort of weird-looking handheld weaponry. "What the is that?" "It's called a flintlock pistol and it's awesome," the Kunoichi said as she waved around said object in her left hand. "Do you guys want to see how it works?" Sure, I'm also curious at how foreign weaponry worked." "Go on, shithead." The Kunoichi smirked as she followed the instructions given to along with the pistol by one of the townspeople. The Kunoichi aimed for a rock at the top of a nearby pile of rubble, presumably remains of a house that was destroyed by the attack. Pulling the hammer of the pistol back, the Kunoichi took aim before pulling the trigger. Bang! The stone was smashed to pieces as a small metallic ball shot out of the pistol. "That was so cool," the kunoichi excitedly said as she blew away the residual smoke coming from the barrel of the gun. I am so getting more of these things. That was good, the eye-smiling white-haired man said as he looked closely at the smashed stone, only this time in his mind he substituted the stone for an actual human body. Those things are dangerous, he thought. Hey, can you let me try that out, shithead? Asked the feisty redhead. No, get your own. That was so unyoutful. Shouted the other as he kept doing sit-ups. The leader of the group just shook his head as he watched his subordinates' antics. He didn't really know why, but he really did have a bad feeling about this mission. Seeing the redhead trying to pry the weapon off the other kunoichi's hand just made the feeling worse. This is going to be a long mission, he whispered as he finally pulled his orange book once more and started reading. Bang! Echoed the sound of the weapon firing once more, which was shortly followed with the shouts of pain. The man sighed. Really long mission, he added as he placed his book away. He needed all of them in one piece if he wanted to have any hopes of dragging back the problematic blonde princess to Konoha. Kami knows he needed all the help that he could get. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.